In the complex world of human communication, not every conversation is what it seems. Sometimes, hidden beneath friendly smiles or calm words, there are powerful tricks being used to control the way we think, feel, and act. One of the most subtle yet damaging tactics is called gaslighting, a method designed to make you question your own reality without even realizing it. To understand how this manipulation works, it helps to look at where it comes from, how it shows up in everyday life, and why it can be so hard to detect. Gaslighting is one of the most powerful and dangerous ways someone can manipulate another person. It's when someone deliberately makes you doubt your own memories, perceptions, and even your sanity. They twist facts, deny things they've said or done, and create a false version of reality. One where you feel like you can't trust your own mind anymore. The term gaslighting comes from a 1944 movie called Gaslight, where a husband tries to drive his wife mad to steal her money. He starts dimming the gas lights in their house, but when she notices and points it out, he denies it, telling her she's imagining things. Over time, she begins to doubt her own observations, making her more and more dependent on his version of reality. This is where the term comes from, manipulating someone to the point that they question their own sanity. In real life, gaslighting can happen in many situations, from personal relationships to work and beyond. Imagine a relationship where one partner constantly acts in ways that make the other feel insecure, like flirting with other people or making hurtful comments. When confronted, the gaslighter might say things like, "You're just too sensitive," or, "That never happened, you're imagining it." Over time, the person being gaslighted starts to doubt their own feelings, becoming less sure of their own reality. What's worse is that this doubt can turn into self-blame, making them think they're the problem. At work, gaslighting can be used to cover up mistakes or manipulate employees. For example, a boss might give vague instructions or change deadlines without telling the team. When an employee misses the deadline, the boss might say, "I told you about this. You must not have been paying attention." Even though the employee knows they weren't informed properly, the boss's constant denial makes them question their memory and judgment, leaving them feeling guilty or confused. In families, gaslighting can occur when one family member denies events or behaviors that others witnessed. For instance, a parent might tell a child, "That never happened, you're exaggerating again." The child begins to feel that their experiences and emotions aren't valid, causing them to question their own memories. This creates an unhealthy power dynamic where the gaslighter controls the truth and the victim is left doubting themselves. The real danger of gaslighting is that it works over time, slowly chipping away at your sense of self. You begin to feel more unsure of your own thoughts and emotions, and you may even start to rely on the manipulator for validation, unable to trust your own perspective. To protect yourself from gaslighting, it's important to stay connected to your own reality. Keeping a record of important events, talking to trusted friends or family members, and asking for second opinions can help you maintain a clear sense of what's true. Trusting your own feelings and seeking support when needed is the best defense against this harmful manipulation tactic. Subliminal messaging. You're watching a commercial. The music is soft, the lighting warm, and images of smiling people flash across the screen. Suddenly, a few words appear at the bottom. Available for a limited time only. Your heart beats a little faster. I need to act now, you think. That's not a coincidence. That's subliminal messaging at work, one of the sneakiest psychological manipulation tactics out there. Subliminal messaging means slipping suggestions into your mind without you realizing it. These messages are often so subtle, so fast or hidden, that you don't consciously notice them. But your subconscious mind does. And once the idea is planted there, it can quietly grow, influencing your thoughts, feelings, or actions later. A classic example is flashing a word like thirsty on a movie screen for a fraction of a second, too quick for the eye to catch. But after that, more people buy soda. Or in an ad, someone might whisper a word like safe or power under background music. You don't hear it clearly, but your mind registers it. You suddenly feel more secure or more impressed with the product, and you're not even sure why. This isn't just used in marketing. Subliminal cues can also be used in relationships or conversations. A manipulative person might use a certain tone of voice, repeated words, or even background visuals that subtly shift how you feel. They may say something like, "Some people, when they finally realize what they deserve, start to make real changes." It sounds like a casual comment, but it's a planted suggestion, meant to make you reflect or act without direct pressure. Even colors, music, or symbols can carry subliminal weight. Think about political ads where candidates are shown with flags waving and deep, reassuring music playing. It's all designed to create feelings of trust and patriotism, not through logic, but through emotional priming that works just below your awareness. Subliminal messaging works because our subconscious mind is like a sponge. It soaks up patterns, emotions, and symbols even when our conscious brain is distracted. That's why it's so powerful, and also why it can be dangerous. You might believe you're making an independent choice, when really, you're reacting to suggestions that were planted like seeds in the background. To guard against subliminal manipulation, slow things down. Ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? Where did that idea come from? Be curious about the things that suddenly feel urgent or attractive, and don't be afraid to step back and think critically, even about things that just feel right. Because sometimes what feels natural was carefully placed there, not for your benefit, but to steer you silently, one whisper at a time. Suggestive language and hypnosis. You're having a conversation with someone who speaks slowly, gently, almost rhythmically. Their voice feels smooth, their words soft, almost dreamlike. You're nodding along, even if you're not fully processing every sentence. Before you realize it, you're agreeing, or at least feeling strangely relaxed. This isn't just good conversation. This could be suggestive language and hypnosis in action. This manipulation tactic blends the power of carefully chosen words with a hypnotic, often calming tone to bypass your critical thinking. It's not about swinging watches and falling asleep like in the movies. Real hypnosis in this context is much subtler. It's about relaxing your conscious mind just enough that suggestions slip in unnoticed and stick. Let's break it down simply. Suggestive language is when someone says things in a way that makes you feel like you're making your own decision, even though they're planting the idea. For example, instead of saying, "You should trust me," they might say, "It feels good to be around people you can trust, doesn't it?" See the difference? One is a direct instruction. The other is a gentle nudge, and your brain fills in the blanks. This tactic often uses calming tones, repetition, and phrases that start with, "You may begin to notice," or "as you start to realize." These type of phrases bypass resistance. You don't even feel pressured. That's what makes it powerful. In sales, you might hear a pitch like, "As you imagine yourself using this product every day, you may start to notice how much easier your life becomes." The speaker never said buy it, but your mind already started picturing ownership and benefit. In personal relationships, someone might use suggestive language when they want to influence your emotions. They might say, "You're starting to see how much you mean to me, and how good it feels to be really understood." These aren't just sweet words, they're suggestions, meant to evoke specific feelings and deepen emotional reliance. The hypnosis part isn't magic or mind control. It's more about putting your brain in a receptive state, relaxed, not overly critical, and open to new thoughts. This can be done through repetitive speech, soft eye contact, comforting settings, or simply telling you to imagine or feel. It's a way of talking that slips under the radar and gently steers your inner voice. So how can you protect yourself? Pay attention to how people talk to you, not just what they say. If you find yourself feeling unusually agreeable, calm, or even confused, pause. Ask yourself, am I being asked something directly, or am I being led to a feeling or belief without realizing it? Manipulation doesn't always come with red flags or arguments. Sometimes it comes wrapped in kindness, softness, and words that sound like your own thoughts, until you realize they were never yours to begin with. Learned helplessness. There are moments in life when you feel stuck, like no matter what you do, nothing seems to change. You might feel like your actions don't make a difference, or that trying isn't worth it anymore. This feeling doesn't just appear out of nowhere. Sometimes it's the result of someone else slowly convincing you, directly or indirectly, that you're powerless. This is called learned helplessness, a manipulation tactic that works by breaking your belief in your own ability to act or make decisions until you stop trying altogether. Let's imagine a relationship where one person is constantly being criticized. Every decision they make is questioned. If they cook dinner, they're told it's not good enough. If they share an opinion, it's dismissed or mocked. At first, they might try to speak up or defend themselves, but over time, if every effort is shut down or ridiculed, they begin to give up. They stop offering their opinions, stop taking initiative, and eventually just do whatever they're told. Not because they agree, but because they've been made to believe that trying is useless. That's learned helplessness. It's not about laziness or weakness. It's a response to repeated defeat, shaped by how someone else treats you. This tactic is especially common in controlling relationships, whether romantic, professional, or even between a parent and child. The manipulator uses criticism, punishment, or failure to shape the victim's mind. For example, a controlling boss might set unrealistic goals, then blame the employee when they fail. After a few cycles of this, the employee might stop taking on big tasks, believing they're just not capable. They begin to think, I can't do anything right, and become overly dependent on the boss for direction, exactly what the manipulator wants. Children are especially vulnerable to this tactic. If a child is constantly told they're bad at something, like schoolwork or sports, and never given encouragement or support, they may eventually stop trying. Even when given a chance to succeed, they might not take it, because they've learned to expect failure. That belief follows them into adulthood, where they may avoid challenges, feeling deep down that they're bound to fail. In abusive relationships, learned helplessness can become a powerful tool of control. A partner may isolate the other, chip away at their confidence, and make them feel that they can't survive on their own. The abused partner may stay, not because they want to, but because they genuinely believe they have no other option. They've been convinced that they aren't strong enough, smart enough, or capable enough to leave and rebuild their life. Learned helplessness doesn't just rob someone of their confidence. It also makes them easier to control. When you believe your choices don't matter, you're more likely to let someone else make them for you. You stop fighting back. You stop trying to escape. And that's exactly what the manipulator wants. It's not always obvious. The person doing it might seem helpful or concerned. They might even claim they're just trying to protect or guide you. But the outcome is the same. You slowly lose your sense of independence. Breaking free from learned helplessness starts with small steps. It begins by recognizing that the feelings of powerlessness were learned, not natural. They were taught by someone who wanted you to believe you couldn't stand on your own. The truth is, you can. Rebuilding your confidence means taking risks, making decisions, and giving yourself permission to try, even if you fail sometimes. Because every small success proves that you're not helpless. You never were. You just needed to remember how to take back your power. Groupthink induction. Picture a group of people sitting around a table, nodding along to an idea they're not quite sure about. No one wants to be the one to speak up. No one wants to seem difficult or different. So they all go along with it, even if deep down, they feel something isn't right. This is the power of groupthink induction, a manipulation tactic that pressures people to conform to the majority, even if it means ignoring their own thoughts or values. Groupthink happens when people are more focused on keeping harmony in the group than on making the best or most honest decision. It's not just about agreeing, it's about not rocking the boat. Manipulators use this tactic to control groups without having to force anyone directly. Instead, they create an environment where questioning things feels uncomfortable or even dangerous. Let's take a simple example. Imagine you're on a team at work, and your manager suggests a plan that feels rushed and risky. You glance around the room, expecting someone to raise a concern, but no one does. Maybe some people shift in their seats or look uncertain, but still, everyone nods. You start to wonder, am I the only one who thinks this is a bad idea? So you stay quiet too. That's groupthink in action. One by one, each person doubts their instincts because everyone else seems fine, even if everyone is secretly feeling the same discomfort. Manipulators know that people fear standing out, so they might act overly confident in their decisions or reward those who agree with them. They might shame or criticize the rare person who speaks up. Over time, people learn it's safer to agree than to question. And that's exactly how the manipulator keeps control. This tactic shows up in friendships, families, companies, even political movements. In cults or extreme groups, groupthink can become so powerful that people will go against their own morals just to stay accepted. They start to speak the same way, think the same way, and even believe the same way. Because the cost of being different feels too high. It doesn't always look extreme, though. It can be subtle, like laughing at a joke you don't find funny just because everyone else did, or voting a certain way because your whole social circle expects it. The pressure to fit in can be quiet, but overwhelming. The key to resisting groupthink is to stay connected to your own inner voice. Ask yourself, if I were alone, would I still agree with this? Am I staying silent just to be liked? Sometimes, speaking up feels uncomfortable, but it can also be the most honest and necessary thing you do. Being part of a group shouldn't mean giving up your judgment. Real strength comes from being able to think with others, not for them. Cognitive dissonance. There's something deeply powerful about the way people can manipulate others through confusion. It's subtle, yet incredibly effective. The tactic is called cognitive dissonance, and it's all about creating a mental conflict inside someone's mind, making them question their own beliefs or behaviors. It works by presenting contradictions that force the person to reconcile what they thought was true with what they're being told. And when they can't, they often end up doubting themselves or changing their view, not because they want to, but because they're mentally exhausted from the tug of war. Imagine you've always believed that honesty is essential in a relationship. It's one of your core values. But one day, your partner lies to you. Not about something small, but something important. When you confront them, they say, "Well, I didn't want to hurt your feelings," or "Everyone lies a little." Suddenly, you're faced with a contradiction. The lie goes against your core belief, but the excuse makes sense in a way. You begin to feel confused. Maybe they're right. Maybe lying isn't as bad as you thought. But then, That inner conflict starts to eat at you. What you once believed doesn't seem as clear anymore, and you're left questioning everything, including your trust in your own principles. This confusion is cognitive dissonance in action. The manipulator introduces an idea that directly contradicts your established beliefs, making you feel unsettled. Instead of accepting the contradiction as a sign that something isn't right, your brain works overtime to make sense of it. In the process, you might end up convincing yourself that the manipulator's version of reality is valid, simply to relieve the discomfort of that inner conflict. This tactic can also be used in politics or advertising. Consider how political figures sometimes tell outrageous lies, but later explain them with an argument that sounds somewhat reasonable. What I said wasn't technically a lie, it's just that the media misrepresented it, they might argue. At first you might reject this explanation, but as time passes, you hear the same excuse repeated by others, and the conflicting ideas begin to blend together. The mental tug of war can make you start doubting your initial beliefs, weakening your stance, and making you more open to what the manipulator is pushing. Another example is in unhealthy friendships or toxic work environments. Imagine a friend who repeatedly asks you for favors and then subtly complains when you need something in return. They might say, "I thought you were there for me," or "I guess I must be a bad friend." These comments plant seeds of doubt, making you question your own expectations and whether you're being selfish by asking for anything in return. You start to feel like you're the one in the wrong, even though you know deep down that healthy relationships are supposed to be reciprocal. The key to understanding cognitive dissonance is realizing that the discomfort of conflicting beliefs is what keeps the manipulation effective. The manipulator wants you to feel unsettled, unsure of yourself. Once you're confused, you're more likely to accept their version of reality. To break free from this manipulation, it's important to pause and reflect. When you're feeling that inner conflict, ask yourself, is this really what I believe? Or am I being swayed by someone else's influence? Clarity comes when you recognize that sometimes the confusion is the manipulation itself. Behavioral pattern programming. It doesn't happen overnight. That's the scary part. You don't wake up one morning and realize your habits, thoughts, and behaviors have been molded by someone else's hands. It unfolds slowly, like water shaping stone, barely noticeable until the changes are deep and permanent. This is what behavioral pattern programming looks like. A manipulation tactic that doesn't just influence what you do, it rewires how you do it, again and again, until you respond almost automatically. Think about Pavlov's dog. Every time the bell rang, the dog would salivate, even if there was no food. That's conditioning. Now imagine a person using that idea on someone, not with bells, but with attention, affection, criticism, or even silence. You say something they like, you get a warm smile, praise, maybe even physical affection. You say something they dislike, you're met with coldness, withdrawal, a quiet punishment. Over time, without even realizing it, you adjust. You say less. You choose words that keep the peace. You behave in ways that get the reward and avoid the discomfort. A simple example. Raj works for a manager named Claire. Claire never gives direct orders. She just reacts. If Raj takes initiative and it aligns with her unspoken expectations, she praises him in front of others. If he makes a decision she doesn't like, she ignores him for days or makes subtle jokes about his judgment in meetings. Eventually, Raj learns to wait for Claire's hints, to stay in the lines even when they're invisible. He's no longer working with confidence. He's working for approval, training himself like a pet without even knowing it. At home, it can look even more personal. Imagine someone in a relationship where the rules keep shifting. They're told, "I just need you to be more supportive." But every time they offer support, the partner changes what that means. One day it's staying home more. The next, it's texting less. Over time, they become hyper-aware of every mood shift, every sigh, every pause in conversation. They build routines around avoiding conflict. They start asking less for themselves and giving more, just to avoid triggering that next wave of coldness or guilt. What makes this tactic so insidious is how invisible it can be. The victim feels like they're just being considerate. They often don't realize that their responses have been programmed, shaped through repeated reactions, silent punishments, and inconsistent rewards. They think they're making choices. In reality, they're running through someone else's pattern. And when you step back, that's the horror of it. Not just that someone could condition another person like this, but that it works so well. Because it taps into something deeply human. Our desire for connection, for peace, for approval. And when those things are handed out like breadcrumbs, we'll start walking the path they choose, again and again, until it becomes our own. Intermittent reinforcement. There's something especially disorienting about being treated wonderfully one moment, then coldly the next, without warning. One day, they're calling you their favorite person, showering you with attention, making you feel on top of the world. The next day, they pull back completely. No texts, no warmth, barely a glance in your direction. You're left wondering what changed, what you did wrong, and how to get that warmth back. This back and forth pattern is called intermittent reinforcement. It's a powerful form of emotional manipulation. What makes it so confusing is that the reward, the love, affection, approval, is given randomly. You never know when it's coming or why it suddenly stops. But when it does come, it feels amazing. That's what makes it addictive. You hold on to the highs so tightly that you overlook the lows. You start chasing those moments, just trying to get back to the good times. Imagine someone training a dog. If they give the dog a treat every time it sits, the dog learns the pattern quickly. But if they only give a treat sometimes, the dog actually becomes more eager, more obedient, constantly sitting and hoping this is the time the treat appears. That's how intermittent reinforcement works. By keeping the reward unpredictable, it makes the person work harder, not less. In relationships, this might look like a partner who's incredibly loving after a fight, promising change, being affectionate, planning something special. You feel hopeful, relieved. But days later, they're back to being distant or even hurtful. You try to bring it up, and they accuse you of overthinking. Then just when you're ready to walk away, they say exactly what you need to hear, pulling you back in. This cycle creates confusion, self-doubt, and emotional dependency. You can start to believe that the problem must be you. You think if you just do or say the right thing, the affection will return. You remember how good it felt when things were nice, and that hope keeps you stuck. You might even start blaming yourself for the bad moments and giving them credit for the good ones. It's not easy to see it when you're in it. The inconsistency feels like a challenge you want to solve, not a red flag. But real love, real care, is consistent. It doesn't keep you guessing. It doesn't make you earn good treatment by enduring long stretches of silence or coldness. If you feel like you're always waiting for someone to return to their good version, ask yourself, is the love I'm getting constant or conditional? You deserve affection that doesn't come and go like the weather. Love that stays even when things aren't perfect. Because love isn't a game of chance, and your peace shouldn't depend on someone else's unpredictable moods. Dependency. In some relationships, control doesn't come through yelling or obvious demands. Sometimes it slips in through quiet gestures and sweet words. It feels like comfort at first. Someone always being there, taking care of things for you, making life feel easier. But then, slowly, you notice you're not making choices on your own anymore. You're checking with them before you do anything. You hesitate to act without their input. That's how dependency is created. Not by force, but by gradually removing your sense of independence until you forget what it felt like to trust yourself. Imagine someone always offering to fix things for you. Your car breaks down, they're there. You're having trouble with a decision, they step in. You're stressed about bills, they take over. It seems helpful, even loving. But over time, when you try to handle something alone, they say, "Are you sure you can manage that?" Or, "You're always so forgetful, I better do it." Slowly, you begin to question your ability to handle anything without them. And that's exactly what they want. This tactic often shows up in romantic relationships, but it can happen in families, friendships, and workplaces too. A parent might keep doing everything for their adult child, even if the child wants to take responsibility. A boss might never give you a full project, always stepping in to help, just enough to make sure you're never fully in control. The pattern is the same. They give just enough support to look helpful while keeping you just unsure enough to stay reliant on them. The manipulator's goal isn't to support you, it's to keep you needing them. Because if you need them, you're less likely to leave, to question their behavior, or to grow into your full power. And when you do try to reclaim some independence, they might react with guilt tripping, playing the victim, or even anger. "I do everything for you," they'll say. "This is how you repay me?" But true support doesn't make you smaller. It doesn't stop you from learning, making mistakes, or growing stronger. Real care encourages your independence, even if that means you no longer rely on the other person as much. People who love you don't want you stuck. They want you to thrive, even if it means letting go of control. When someone creates dependency, they're not giving you strength. They're slowly taking it away. And one of the most powerful things you can do in response is begin to trust your own decisions again, even if it feels unfamiliar at first. Rebuilding that trust in yourself is a quiet kind of freedom, and it's yours to take back. Assume you're standing in front of a mirror after an argument, replaying everything that was said. At first, you were upset about how the other person treated you. Maybe they yelled, maybe they made a hurtful joke that cut too deep. You spoke up. You said that wasn't okay. But somehow, the conversation flipped. Now they're crying, saying they're scared of you. They're telling you that you were the one being cruel. You're stunned. Wait, weren't they the one who crossed the line? That's what reversing roles looks like. It's when someone paints themselves as the victim, after they've done the harm. It's not just denial or misunderstanding. It's a calculated tactic to dodge accountability by flipping the story so you're the one who ends up feeling guilty. This kind of manipulation can sneak into almost any relationship. Say a friend regularly makes fun of you in front of others. One day, you finally call them out, calmly but clearly. Instead of reflecting on their behavior, they get offended. "Wow," they say. "I guess I can't joke around with you anymore. You're always so sensitive. Maybe you're the one who's mean." Suddenly, you're defending yourself for your reaction, not their actions. In families, this often happens when someone finally sets a boundary. A child tells a parent they need space, or asks to be treated with more respect. The parent responds with, "After everything I've done for you? You're so ungrateful. I can't believe how selfish you've become." The focus shifts. The person who was hurt is now being blamed for hurting them. Reversing roles creates confusion. It's meant to. If you start to doubt yourself, if you start thinking, "Maybe I was too harsh," then the manipulator has done their job. They've taken your valid feelings and twisted them into something shameful. One of the hardest parts about this tactic is the way it uses your empathy against you. If you're a caring person, if you try to see the other side, then when someone plays the victim, you naturally want to comfort them, even if they were the one who hurt you. The best way to recognize role reversal is to step back and ask yourself, what actually happened first? Who did what? Who raised their voice? Who made the hurtful comment? Your feelings matter, and they don't become invalid just because someone else got louder about theirs. You can care about someone and still hold them. Emotional blackmail. Sometimes in life, the people we care about use our emotions against us, not with shouting or force, but with subtle, quiet pressure that wraps around our hearts and makes us feel guilty, responsible, or even scared to do what we want. This is emotional blackmail, a manipulation tactic where someone uses your feelings as leverage to get what they want, often at the cost of your peace or freedom. Emotional blackmail often hides in everyday words and situations. Imagine you're in a relationship and you want to go out with your friends for the evening. You let your partner know, and they respond with, "Sure, go ahead. I guess I'll just sit here all alone again." They don't say you can't go, but suddenly you feel bad, selfish even, like your choice is hurting them. That guilt? That's emotional blackmail at work. It's not always that obvious. Sometimes it comes with tears. If you really loved me, you wouldn't do this. Other times it's silent treatment, cold stares, long silences, or dramatic sighs. These reactions are designed to make you feel responsible for their sadness or frustration. So what do? You give in, not because it's what you want, but to make the discomfort stop. That's how the cycle begins. Parents can also use emotional blackmail, often without realizing it. A parent might say, "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me?" When a child chooses a different career path or lifestyle, it's meant to stir guilt, to make the child question their choices, and sometimes it works. The child might give up their dreams just to avoid the emotional weight of disappointing their parents. The love is still there, but now it's tangled with guilt and control. Friends can do it too. Imagine a friend who always needs your help but gets upset the one time you say no. They might say, "Wow, I guess I know where I stand now," or "I thought you were different." These statements aren't about communication. They're about making you feel bad enough to change your mind. That's emotional blackmail. This tactic works so well because it targets our biggest emotional buttons: guilt, love, fear of abandonment, and the need for approval. It doesn't force us, it corners us emotionally. The worst part? The person using it often paints themselves as the victim. They're not asking, they're suffering, and you're made to feel like the cause. Breaking free from emotional blackmail starts with recognizing it. Ask yourself, am I making this choice out of love or just to avoid guilt or conflict? Healthy relationships don't need pressure or guilt to function. They respect your boundaries and choices, even if they're different. Emotional blackmail may be wrapped in love or concern, but underneath, it's about control. And once you see it clearly, you can begin to choose freedom over fear. Hoovering. There are moments in life when we think we finally escaped something: a toxic relationship, a manipulative friend, or a draining situation. We breathe a little easier, feel a little freer. But then, just when we least expect it, that person pops back into our lives, acting as if nothing ever happened or suddenly pretending they've changed. This sneaky return is known as hoovering, named after the vacuum cleaner, because it's all about sucking someone back into a situation they had already escaped. Hoovering usually happens after someone has been cut off. Maybe you've blocked them, stopped responding to messages, or broken up with them. At first, there might be silence. Then, out of nowhere, they send a message. "I miss you," or "I've been thinking about all the good times." Sometimes it's disguised as concern. "I heard your mom was sick, are you okay?" Or even something as simple as, "I found your old sweater, want it back?" These little messages aren't really about the sweater or your well-being. They're hooks. Tiny emotional lures meant to pull you back in. What makes hoovering so effective is how emotional it can feel. The person might sound vulnerable, apologetic, or even romantic. They might make big promises, claiming they've changed, or remind you of beautiful memories. They do whatever they think will trigger your emotional response. The goal? To get you to open the door, answer the call, reply to the message. And once you do, they can begin their manipulation again. Let's imagine someone ends a relationship with their manipulative partner. The partner never respected their boundaries and often made them feel small. After the breakup, they block the partner on everything. A few months later, they receive an email. "I've been in therapy, and I finally understand how much I hurt you. Can we just talk?" This sounds genuine, right? And maybe part of it is. But if that person hasn't truly changed, and their intention is just to reel you back in, it's hoovering. Often, once the person returns and feels they have control again, their behavior reverts back to manipulation, guilt tripping, or even emotional abuse. Hoovering isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's subtle. A like on an old photo, a random meme sent by mistake, or a message pretending not to know they were blocked. "Hey, haven't heard from you in a while, just wanted to say hi." These small actions are calculated to reopen emotional doors. It's important to understand that hoovering is about control, not care. It's not about love, but about keeping a grip on someone's emotions. The best defense is awareness. Ask yourself, why now? What do they want from me? Has anything truly changed? Or is this just another cycle? If the relationship or interaction was harmful before, it's likely to be harmful again. You need peace. And anyone who disrupts that peace just to feel powerful again doesn't deserve access to your life. Love bombing. At first, it feels like a dream. You meet someone, and suddenly your world is full of color. They shower you with compliments. They text you constantly, tell you how special you are, how they've never felt this way before. Maybe they give you surprise gifts, plan romantic dates, or say things like, "I can't believe I finally found you." It feels intense, exciting, and overwhelming in the best way. This is love bombing. It's when someone floods you with attention, affection, and praise, especially early on, to draw you in quickly. It might seem like true love, but it's not always coming from a genuine place. The real goal behind all the sweet words and grand gestures is to hook you emotionally, fast. Imagine going on 3 dates with someone, and, by the end of the week, they're saying, "I think I'm in love with you," or, "You're the only person who's ever understood me." At first, it felt flattering. But then things start to move too fast. They want to be with you all the time. They get upset if you don't respond right away. They say they can't live without you, even though you've just met. And if you try to slow things down, they act hurt, or worse, accuse you of not feeling the same. That's the tricky part. Love bombing makes it hard to see the red flags, because it all feels so good in the beginning. But the intensity isn't about love, it's about control. The person wants you emotionally invested before you've had a chance to really see who they are. And once they know you're hooked, things often start to shift. After the initial rush, the attention might disappear. Suddenly, the person who once texted you, "Good morning," every day is now distant or moody. They might even become critical, cold, or controlling. And you're left confused, wondering what happened to the person who made you feel so amazing. You might try to get back to that place, doing whatever it takes to earn their affection again. That's the hidden cost of love bombing. It creates emotional whiplash. You're pulled in with warmth, then kept off balance by its sudden disappearance. It turns love into a chase, and connection into a reward that you have to earn. Real love takes time. It grows slowly, with patience and mutual understanding. If someone truly cares about you, they won't need to overwhelm you with attention or push you into something faster than you're ready for. They'll want to get to know you, not just make you fall for a version of them they've carefully curated. When affection feels too big too soon, it's okay to slow down and check in with yourself. Love should feel safe, not like a roller coaster you didn't agree to ride. Triangulation. It starts quietly, almost invisibly. You might not even notice it at first. One day, someone you care about brings up something someone else said about you. Maybe they say, "I was talking to your sister and she agrees you've been acting selfish lately." Or, "Even your best friend thinks you're being too dramatic." And just like that, you're no longer in a conversation with one person. Now it feels like you're being ganged up on. That's triangulation. Triangulation is when someone pulls a third person into a conflict that should really be between two people. It's not about finding a peaceful resolution or seeking advice. It's used to create pressure, cause doubt, and shift the balance of power. It often leaves you feeling isolated, outnumbered, or paranoid, even if the third person never actually said what's being claimed. Let's say you get into an argument with your partner about something simple, like how you manage time. Instead of talking it through with you directly, they say something like, "Well, even my mom says you're always late." Now, your disagreement isn't just with your partner. It's with this invisible, supporting voice they've added to their side. It makes you question yourself. Is everyone talking about me behind my back? Am I really the problem here? Sometimes the third person is real, and sometimes they're completely made up, or the quote is twisted to fit the manipulator's narrative. Either way, the goal is the same: to use someone else's opinion or imagined support as a weapon. The message becomes, "It's not just me who sees your flaws, it's everyone." That can hit hard, especially if you already struggle with self-doubt or care deeply about what others think. In family situations, triangulation is common too. A parent might say, "Your brother's worried about how you're acting," when in reality, the brother may have said no such thing. In friend groups, one person might say, "Everyone's been talking about how you've changed," planting seeds of distrust and pushing people apart instead of together. The danger of triangulation is how it breaks down communication and builds confusion. Instead of two people working through something honestly, it becomes a triangle of whispers, assumptions, and false alliances. It stirs insecurity and makes you feel like you have to defend yourself, not just to one person, but to some invisible audience. The best way to cut through triangulation is by bringing everything back to direct communication. A simple response like, "If that's how they feel, they can tell me directly," sets a boundary and stops the game. It reminds the person trying to triangulate that you won't play along with secondhand blame or ghost conversations. You deserve relationships where problems are addressed with honesty, not manipulation. Triangulation isn't just messy. It's a tactic used to divide and control. Recognizing it is the first step in keeping your connections healthy and grounded in truth. Divide and conquer. Sometimes, conflict doesn't come from what's said outright. It grows in the spaces between people. One person whispers something to one friend, tells a slightly different story to another, and steps back to watch. Suddenly, people are suspicious of each other, unsure who to trust. That's how divide and conquer works. It's a quiet manipulation tactic meant to break unity and turn people against each other so that the manipulator stays in control. Think about a group of coworkers. Things are going well until one day, someone starts dropping small comments. "Did you hear what Mark said about your idea?" they say to Lisa. Then they go to Mark and say, "Lisa doesn't think you've been pulling your weight." Neither of those things were true. Or maybe they were twisted just enough to sound believable. But now, Lisa is cold with Mark. Mark keeps his distance. And the person who started it all? They look innocent, even helpful, like they're just passing along information. But really, they've made themselves the center of everything. This tactic works best when people aren't talking to each other directly. It thrives in silence and suspicion, and it doesn't always have to be dramatic. Sometimes it shows up in families, when a parent plays siblings against each other, praising one while criticizing the other behind their back. Or in friendships, when someone tries to make their friends jealous of one another, saying things like, "I don't know why I even invite her. She always acts like she's better than everyone." The goal is simple: keep others distracted, divided, and on edge. That way, the person using the tactic can steer things without resistance. If everyone's busy watching their backs, no one's watching them. What makes divide and conquer so harmful is how it poisons trust. It turns simple misunderstandings into grudges, and small differences into major rifts. Relationships that used to feel solid begin to crumble, not because of real issues, but because of planted doubts and unspoken tension. The way out of it? Directness, openness. When someone says, "So-and-so said this about you," it's okay to pause and ask yourself, why are they telling me this? It's also okay to go to the source, have the real conversation. Most manipulation tactics rely on people not talking to each other, on assumptions being taken as facts. But when people talk honestly, the gaps start to close. Divide and conquer only works when people forget they're on the same side. The strength of any group, family, friendship, workplace, comes from connection, not conflict. When that bond is protected and communication stays clear, there's less room for someone to twist things from the shadows. Scapegoating. Sometimes when things go wrong, instead of taking responsibility, a person will point the finger at someone else. They might blame you for something they did or shift the attention away from their own mistakes. This manipulation tactic is called scapegoating. It's when someone unfairly places blame on another person in order to protect themselves, avoid consequences, or maintain control. Scapegoating can happen in families, workplaces, friendships, even in entire communities. It usually targets one person who becomes the fall guy whenever something goes wrong. Over time, this person might start to believe the blame, even if they know deep down they didn't deserve it. That's the dangerous part. Scapegoating doesn't just damage relationships, it chips away at someone's self-worth. Let's say there's a team at work that misses a deadline. The manager doesn't want upper leadership to think they made poor choices or didn't communicate clearly, so they blame the junior employee, the one with the least power. It was Sarah's fault, they say. She didn't complete her part in time. Maybe Sarah did make a small mistake, but it wasn't the reason the whole project failed. Still, she becomes the scapegoat, and everyone else lets it happen because it's easier than facing the truth. In families, scapegoating can go even deeper. Sometimes one child is constantly blamed for family problems. If there's conflict or stress, the parents might say, "If only you behaved better, everything would be fine." That child ends up feeling like they're the root of all problems, even though the issues are much more complex. Maybe the parents have unresolved anger or financial stress they won't admit to. Blaming the child gives them someone to focus on instead of dealing with the real issues. Scapegoating often works because it brings temporary relief. The group or person doing the blaming feels lighter. They've unloaded the guilt. But it's unfair, and it damages the one who's being blamed. Over time, the scapegoated person might withdraw, stop speaking up, or constantly try to fix things to gain approval. This keeps them stuck in a cycle of guilt and low self-esteem. A classic example of scapegoating can even be found in history and politics. When leaders want to unite people or distract them from real problems, They sometimes blame an outside group, immigrants, another country, or a certain community, claiming they're the reason for the nation's struggles. This creates division and fear, while the real issues go unaddressed. To recognize scapegoating, ask yourself, is someone being blamed repeatedly, even when it doesn't fully add up? Is the blame always falling on the same person, and are others quick to go along without question? If so, it's worth stepping back and looking at the full picture. No one deserves to carry the weight of everyone else's mistakes. In healthy relationships and environments, responsibility is shared, not dumped on one person. Stonewalling. You're trying to talk. You're upset, confused, or maybe just need clarity. But the other person says nothing. No nod, no words, no glance, not even a sigh. Just a heavy, suffocating silence. You ask what's wrong, and they walk away. You try again later, and they stare past you like you're invisible. That's stonewalling. Stonewalling isn't just someone needing a break. It's when a person shuts down completely and refuses to communicate, especially during important or emotional conversations. It's used as a way to avoid, punish, or control. And when you're on the receiving end, it feels like being locked out of a room you didn't even know you weren't allowed to enter. Let's imagine a couple. One partner brings up a problem, maybe about feeling hurt or disconnected. The other immediately turns cold. They stop responding, leave the room, or stare at their phone. Hours pass, maybe days. Still no response. No discussion. No closure. Just silence that feels like a wall too high to climb. This kind of silence speaks volumes, but not in a healthy way. It says, "You don't deserve my time." Or, "You can't touch me emotionally." It makes the person who wants to talk feel helpless and small, as if their feelings don't matter. And over time, that starts to wear you down. You begin to doubt yourself. You might start avoiding certain topics just to keep the peace, walking on eggshells, hoping not to trigger that same wall again. Stonewalling isn't always loud in its impact, but it's deeply damaging. It interrupts connection, leaves problems unresolved, and makes emotional safety feel out of reach. It teaches you that speaking up equals punishment, and silence becomes a weapon disguised as peace. It can happen in all kinds of relationships, between partners, parents, and children, even at work. For example, you bring up a concern to your boss, and they respond by ignoring your emails for a week. Or you tell a friend that something they said hurt you, and they suddenly disappear from your life for days, refusing to answer texts. It's a way of saying, "I won't deal with this," while still controlling the outcome. Now, everyone needs space sometimes, especially when emotions run high. But there's a big difference between taking a breather and completely shutting someone out. Healthy space includes communication like, "I need some time, but let's talk about this later." Stonewalling says nothing, leaving the other person stranded in uncertainty. If you've ever been stonewalled, you know the pain it brings. You may have felt like screaming into a void, or worse, blaming yourself for their silence. But their silence isn't your fault. It's a choice they make, and it's okay to recognize it for what it is. A form of emotional manipulation that doesn't belong in any relationship built on respect. Blindsiding. It's the kind of moment that feels like someone pulled the rug out from under you. You're having a regular conversation, maybe even feeling fine, and then suddenly something is said or done that you didn't see coming. You're left confused, caught off guard, unsure what just happened. That's what blindsiding feels like. It's not just a disagreement or a tense exchange. It's when someone deliberately brings something heavy, unexpected, or hurtful into the mix with no warning, leaving you unprepared and off balance. Think about this. You're sitting with your partner, talking about weekend plans. Everything seems normal. Then out of nowhere, they say something like, I don't even know if I can keep doing this with you. No lead up, no context, just a sudden emotional bomb. You freeze. What are they talking about? Where did this come from? That jarring shift leaves you scrambling to catch up, and more often than not, they gain control of the moment because they've had time to prepare, and you haven't. Blindsiding works because of that power imbalance. The person doing it has usually thought about their move ahead of time. Maybe they've been holding on to resentment or planning to confront you but waited for the perfect moment, one that works best for them. They might choose a public place so you can't react freely, or they might wait until you're exhausted or distracted. In any case, the shock is part of the tactic. In friendships, blindsiding can show up as a friend suddenly bringing up every grievance they've ever had, all at once, without any signs beforehand. You've been a terrible friend lately, they might say, listing things they never mentioned before. You feel ambushed, like you're standing in a courtroom you didn't know you were walking into. It doesn't create space for mutual resolution. It corners you. At work, a colleague might call you out in front of others during a meeting, mentioning issues they never brought to you privately. Again, the goal is not just to raise a concern. It's to throw you off your footing, to leave you vulnerable and unsure how to respond. Blindsiding isn't about honesty or openness. It's about control. It's emotional disruption disguised as communication. The person delivering it holds all the cards while you're left reeling. And often, when you react, maybe with shock, anger, or tears, they accuse you of being too emotional or unable to handle the truth. The healthiest relationships don't rely on surprise attacks. They give space for hard conversations, but with care and respect. They allow time to process, to speak, to respond, not to defend yourself after being emotionally hit without warning. If you find yourself repeatedly being blindsided, that's a sign the dynamic isn't built on trust or fairness. It's built on keeping you disoriented. And no one thinks clearly when they're always trying to catch their breath. The placebo effect. It is a powerful psychological manipulation tactic that plays on the mind's ability to influence the body. It's like being told that a sugar pill will make you feel better, and when you take it, you start feeling healthier, even though there's nothing in the pill to physically help you. This phenomenon happens because you believe the pill will work, and your body responds accordingly. It's all in your mind, but it feels very real. Let's say you go to a doctor for a headache, and the doctor gives you a pill, saying it will relieve the pain. They might not tell you it's just a sugar pill, but you trust them, and you believe in the power of the medication. Shortly after taking the pill, your headache starts to fade, and you feel much better. The pill didn't actually contain any medicine to treat the headache, but your mind believed it did, and that belief caused your body to respond positively. This tactic isn't always used in a harmful way. For example, doctors sometimes use placebos to help patients feel better, especially in situations where no specific treatment is available. It's also seen in clinical trials where participants don't know if they're receiving the actual treatment or a placebo. The placebo group might show improvement just because they expect to feel better. But the placebo effect can also be used manipulatively. Advertisers and marketers may use it to trick consumers into thinking a product has more benefits than it actually does. For example, a company might sell a supplement that claims to improve energy levels. If people take the supplement and believe it will work, they may actually feel more energetic, even though there's nothing special in the product. The power of belief is so strong that it makes them feel the effects. In relationships, the placebo effect can also be used to manipulate emotions. Imagine a partner who tells you that they are doing something special for you, even though they aren't actually doing anything at all. Just the belief that they care and are making an effort might make you feel loved and appreciated, even if their actions don't match their words. What makes the placebo effect so compelling is that it taps into the brain's ability to create real changes based on beliefs. This doesn't just affect physical health, but also our emotional and mental states. If you believe that a situation will improve or that someone is being genuine, your perception of reality changes. You may end up feeling better or acting in ways that make the change happen, even if the external circumstances haven't actually changed. To avoid falling victim to manipulation through the placebo effect, it's important to stay aware of what's truly happening. While positive thinking and belief in something can have real benefits, you should also question whether what you're experiencing is due to your own expectations or if there's a tangible change. Recognizing when the placebo effect is at work can help you make more informed decisions and avoid being manipulated by false promises. Negative reinforcement. There's a kind of control that doesn't come with yelling or threats. It comes through small choices, patterns, and reactions that quietly shape how someone behaves, without them even realizing it. That's what negative reinforcement looks like in relationships. It's when someone removes something unpleasant only after you behave the way they want you to. And slowly, almost without noticing, you start adjusting your actions to avoid discomfort. Let's picture you're in a relationship where arguments always end in silence, distance, or coldness. Not the kind that cools off and comes back with love, but the kind that lingers. No texts, no warmth. You feel the chill settle in, and it stays there until you say you're sorry, even when you're not really at fault. The moment you apologize, the air clears. They're nice again. You're back to normal. So next time, you apologize faster. Not because you believe you were wrong, but because you want the coldness to stop. That's negative reinforcement. It works because it teaches you. If you don't behave the right way, something uncomfortable will happen. And if you do behave the way they want, even if it goes against your own truth, the tension will disappear. It's not always about apologies either. It can show up in so many different forms. Picture a child whose parent always withdraws love when they speak up or question rules. The kid learns, stay quiet, follow instructions, and the love comes back. Or consider a workplace situation. Your boss only speaks kindly when you stay late. When you don't, they ignore you or criticize everything you do. Over time, you start staying late just to avoid the cold shoulder. The hardest part about negative reinforcement is that it doesn't feel aggressive on the surface. There are no direct threats, no harsh words. In fact, when you finally do what they wanted, they might reward you with affection, praise, or relief. So it feels like you've done something right. But really, what's happening is conditioning. Your choices are no longer fully yours. They're being steered by discomfort you're trying to avoid. This kind of manipulation can be deeply confusing. You may feel like you're always chasing peace, tiptoeing around reactions, or constantly adjusting yourself to keep things okay. It wears you down slowly. You stop asking for things. You stop disagreeing. You stop being fully yourself, all in an effort to avoid the negative fallout. But healthy relationships don't use discomfort as a training tool. They don't make you earn kindness by abandoning your truth. In real connection, you're allowed to mess up, speak up, and be human, without fearing that love will be pulled away unless you behave. Love withdrawal. Imagine this. You're in the middle of a heated discussion, trying to get your point across, and suddenly, the conversation shifts. You're not talking about the issue anymore. Now, you're the one who's being ignored, not even given the decency of a response. The person you're trying to talk to stops engaging, goes silent, maybe even walks away. This isn't just a quiet moment. It's a tactic. It's called love withdrawal. It might seem subtle at first, like they're just giving you the cold shoulder for a bit. But when it's used as a pattern, it becomes clear that the silence isn't accidental. It's a calculated move to make you feel small, desperate or unsure. By withdrawing affection or attention, the person aims to make you crave their approval, forcing you to do whatever it takes to get them to engage again. Let's say you're in a relationship where your partner uses silence as a way to control situations. They might be upset, but instead of talking it out, they decide not to speak to you at all. You try to apologize, even if you're not sure what went wrong, but they remain quiet. Days go by, and every time you reach out, you're met with indifference. You start questioning yourself, wondering if you did something wrong or if maybe they don't care about you at all. Eventually, the silence breaks only when they feel like it, and suddenly, they're in control, leaving you in the position of chasing after their attention. In friendships, this can happen too. A friend might stop texting or answering calls for days or weeks. You're left wondering if you did something to upset them. But when they finally speak to you, it's as if nothing happened. The pattern repeats. They pull back when things are good, but when they want something, they come around again. You begin to feel like you're walking on eggshells, unsure of when the next withdrawal will happen. At work, you might see it in a more professional context. Maybe a colleague withholds communication or stops sharing important updates with you when they're upset. Instead of giving you feedback or having a constructive conversation, they use silence to punish you. It can feel like you're being cut off from necessary information, which leaves you anxious and unsure about how to move forward. The key with love withdrawal is that it leaves you feeling abandoned and isolated, with the goal of getting you to beg, apologize, or change your behavior in ways that benefit the person doing the withdrawing. It's a silent power play. And often it doesn't happen once. It's a recurring pattern designed to keep you in a constant state of uncertainty. The way to handle love withdrawal is to recognize it for what it is. You don't need to chase after someone's affection or approval when it's used as a weapon. Silence isn't always a healthy way to communicate, and you have the right to demand honest, open conversations. Healthy relationships are built on trust and dialogue, not on playing games with your emotions. Withholding. Imagine trying to connect with someone, whether it's a partner, a friend, or even a parent, and every time you ask for something simple, like emotional support, affection, or clarity, it's like hitting a brick wall. They're not yelling, not slamming doors, not even saying no outright. They're just holding back, quietly, intentionally. That's withholding. Withholding is when someone refuses to give emotional connection, affection, attention, or information, not because they can't, but because they choose not to. It's a kind of silent control. You might not see it as manipulation at first. It can seem like they're just not in the mood, or need space, or are just tired. But when it becomes a pattern, especially after a disagreement or when they're upset, it starts to feel different. It starts to hurt. For example, you had a disagreement with your partner. Nothing dramatic, just a clash over weekend plans. After that, they go quiet. They don't touch you, don't ask how your day was, don't look you in the eyes. You try to bridge the gap. You apologize, even if you're not sure what you did wrong. Still, nothing changes. They're not angry out loud, but their silence, their distance, speaks volumes. That's withholding. They're using absence, of warmth, of communication, of love, as a way to make you feel bad, to get you to fold. And it's not just romantic. A parent might withhold approval. No matter how hard you try, it's never quite enough. They say little, offer no praise, and leave you chasing their acceptance like a shadow that moves just out of reach. A friend might withhold support, going cold when you're vulnerable, only to warm up when you're back to pretending everything's fine. The pain in withholding isn't just in what's missing. It's in the confusion it creates. You're left wondering, did I do something wrong? Am I asking for too much? You start trying harder, shrinking your needs, trying to guess what will unlock their affection again. That's exactly how withholding works. It's about control without confrontation. It trains you to associate love or approval with obedience, silence, or self-sacrifice. But real connection doesn't work like that. People who care about you don't turn off love like a faucet when you misstep. They don't make you earn their warmth by reading their mind or chasing their approval. That's not love. It's manipulation wrapped in quiet. If you recognize withholding in your life, know this. Your need for affection, reassurance, and open communication is not a weakness. It's human. You don't have to prove your worth to someone who makes you feel small by giving you less when you need more. Love doesn't vanish when things get uncomfortable. Real connection shows up, even when it's hard. Fear-mongering. The world we live in is often unpredictable. News headlines flash warnings about disasters, crime, disease, and chaos. Politicians, media outlets, and even people close to us can use fear as a tool, a way to control how we think, feel, and act. This manipulation tactic is called fear-mongering. It works by feeding us alarming messages over and over until fear becomes our default lens, and once we're afraid, we're much easier to influence. Imagine a person constantly telling you that the world is unsafe, that if you don't follow their advice or stay close to them, something bad will happen. At first, you might be skeptical, but after hearing the same warnings repeatedly, doubt creeps in. You start second-guessing yourself. What if they're right? What if the risk is real? That's how fear-mongering works. It doesn't need facts. It only needs repetition and emotion. Once fear takes root, logic starts to shrink, and in its place grows a need for protection, often from the very person or group who planted the fear in the first place. Fear-mongering is common in toxic relationships. Take, for example, a controlling partner who tells you, "No one else would ever love you the way I do," or, "If you leave me, you'll regret it." These statements don't sound like direct threats, but they plant fear. The fear of loneliness, the fear of failure, the fear of regret. Over time, you might stay in a harmful relationship, not because you want to, but because you're scared of what might happen if you leave. It also shows up in parenting, often without malicious intent. A parent might repeatedly say, "You'll never survive out there on your own," or, "The world is dangerous. You need to stay close to us." While meant to protect, these messages can foster fear in a child's mind, convincing them that independence equals danger. As that child grows, they might become overly dependent, afraid to take risks or make choices on their own. Exactly the kind of control that fear-mongering creates. On a larger scale, fear-mongering is a favorite tactic in politics and advertising. A political leader might claim that if you vote for the other side, the country will fall into chaos. They show images of destruction, crime, and social collapse, not to educate, but to scare. The more frightened people feel, the more likely they are to seek a strong leader to protect them, even if that leader is the one manipulating their fear. It's a cycle. Scare, then offer safety, but only on their terms. Advertisers also use fear to sell products. Commercials for home security systems, for instance, often begin with images of break-ins, strangers lurking, or families in danger. The message is clear: you are not safe. And then, seconds later, they offer the solution, their product. It doesn't matter if the danger is likely or not. Once fear is triggered, we're more willing to act quickly, to buy, to follow, often without thinking twice. Fear-mongering thrives in uncertainty. It takes advantage of moments when people are unsure vulnerable, or looking for answers. The goal isn't to empower or inform. It's to make you feel small, helpless, and in need of someone else's guidance or protection. And once that fear is planted, it can shape your behavior long after the original warning fades. The first defense against fear-mongering is awareness. Ask yourself, is this fear based on facts, or is someone trying to make me afraid on purpose? What do they gain if I'm scared? Take a step back. Gather real information. Talk to different people. Once you name the fear and understand where it's coming from, it loses its grip. Because fear is a powerful tool, but it's even more powerful when you stop letting it control you. Projection. There's a strange feeling you get when someone accuses you of something that's completely off base, something you didn't do, or something that actually sounds a lot like what they tend to do. You might laugh it off at first, thinking it's a misunderstanding, but when it keeps happening, and the accusations keep hitting close to their own behaviors, you start to realize it's not confusion. It's projection. Projection is when someone takes their own thoughts, feelings, or actions and puts them onto you, as if you're the one responsible for them. Instead of owning their behavior, they throw it at you like a hot potato. It's not just denial, it's a full reroute. Picture a couple having a conversation. One partner has been acting distant, maybe hiding their phone or seeming distracted. When the other brings it up gently, the distant one immediately says, "Why are you always so secretive? Are you hiding something from me?" Now the person asking the question is on the defensive. The one who was actually being shady has projected their guilt outward, so they don't have to look inward. Projection can be so subtle, you might not notice it at first. A friend who's often jealous might accuse you of being competitive. A coworker who gossips constantly might claim you're the one who can't be trusted. It's frustrating and disorienting because it forces you into a role that doesn't feel like yours. You start to wonder, do they really see me this way? Or even, am I doing something wrong? The truth is, people who project are often struggling with something they're not ready to admit to themselves. It might be guilt, shame, fear, or insecurity. Instead of facing those uncomfortable emotions, they push them onto someone else. It's a self-protection tactic, but one that causes harm to others. The emotional effect of being on the receiving end of projection can wear you down. You might spend more and more energy trying to defend your intentions or explain your behavior. It's exhausting to constantly be misunderstood, especially by someone who refuses to look at their own part in the situation. One of the most powerful things you can do when faced with projection is to stay grounded in what you know is true. You don't need to absorb false accusations. You don't have to take responsibility for feelings or actions that aren't yours. Respond calmly, if at all. "I'm not sure where that's coming from, but that's not what I'm doing," can be a strong, clear way to hold your line. You can't stop someone from projecting, but you can refuse to carry what they're trying to unload onto you. And in doing that, you protect your clarity, your peace, and your sense of who you really are. Playing on insecurities. In every one of us, there's a soft spot, a quiet, sometimes hidden place where our insecurities live. These are the parts of ourselves we question. Am I good enough? Am I smart enough? Am I lovable? Most of the time we keep going despite them. But when someone wants to manipulate us, they often find a way to press on those exact spots. This tactic is called playing on insecurities, and it's one of the most personal forms of psychological manipulation. Imagine you're starting a new job. You're excited but nervous, unsure if you really belong. Now imagine a coworker who senses this and starts saying little things like, "Wow, that's how you're handling that project? Bold choice," or "I wouldn't have done it that way, but maybe that works for you." They don't openly criticize you, but their words plant seeds of doubt. You start second-guessing everything. Soon, you find yourself relying on their approval just to feel like you're doing okay. That's exactly what they want. People who use this tactic don't always come off as aggressive. In fact, they can seem helpful or even charming, but they're skilled at noticing the cracks in your confidence. Maybe it's your appearance, your intelligence, your parenting, or your past, and they subtly, repeatedly poke at those weaknesses. Over time, your self-doubt grows, and with it, their control over you. This often happens in romantic relationships. Let's say your partner knows you're self-conscious about your weight or looks. Instead of being supportive, they make comments like, "You're lucky I like you the way you are," or, "Most people wouldn't be okay with that." These are disguised as compliments, but they carry an undertone. You're not enough on your own. If you accept this narrative, you begin to believe you need that person just to feel valuable. In friendships, it might look like someone constantly comparing you to others. "Why can't you be more like her?" Or, "He's way more confident than you are." These comparisons dig into your self-worth, and once your confidence starts to drop, they step into the role of the wise or superior one, someone you start looking to for validation. Playing on insecurities is deeply manipulative because it makes people feel small, and when you feel small, you're more likely to stay quiet, to agree, to let someone else take control. The worst part is, many victims blame themselves. They think, "Maybe I really am too sensitive. Maybe they're right." That's how the manipulation locks in. The truth is, everyone has insecurities. But no one has the right to use them as a weapon. A healthy person will protect your insecurities, not expose them. If someone constantly makes you feel unsure of yourself, it's worth asking, are they building me up or tearing me down to feel stronger themselves? Because love, friendship, and respect should never come at the cost of your self-worth. Guilt tripping. You wake up on a Saturday morning, feeling good, making plans for your day. Maybe you're thinking about grabbing coffee, going for a walk, enjoying your weekend. But before you can even get dressed, someone close to you, maybe a partner, parent, or friend, walks in with a heavy sigh and a look that says you did something wrong. They don't yell, they don't argue. Instead, they look disappointed. Maybe they say something like, "Wow, after everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me?" And just like that, your whole mood shifts. This is guilt tripping. It's not about someone expressing how they feel in a healthy way. It's about making you feel bad. Specifically, making you feel responsible for their discomfort or sadness, even when you haven't done anything wrong. It's like emotional weight being quietly handed to you, and if you don't carry it, you're made to feel like a bad person. Let's say you tell a friend you can't come to their birthday dinner because you're overwhelmed with work. Instead of understanding, they respond with, "It's fine, I guess. I didn't expect you to care anyway. No one ever really shows up for me." Now suddenly it's not just about dinner. It's about your character. You're being painted as uncaring or selfish, even though your reason was valid. That's guilt tripping in action. The tricky part is that guilt tripping often comes dressed up as vulnerability. The person may look hurt, soft-spoken, maybe even tearful. And because most people don't want to hurt others, guilt tripping works. You may find yourself apologizing, changing your plans, trying to make it up to them, even if you didn't do anything wrong in the first place. Over time, this kind of manipulation creates a dynamic where your needs are always pushed aside. You start saying yes to things you don't want to do, just to avoid that heavy feeling of guilt. You might even begin to anticipate the guilt before it comes, and that's when you know it's gotten deep. You're not living for yourself anymore. You're managing someone else's emotions constantly. What's worse is that guilt tripping often pretends to be love or care. "I just wanted to spend time with you," they say. Or, I'm only upset because I love you so much. But real love doesn't manipulate. It doesn't need to make someone feel small in order to feel seen. Being able to spot guilt tripping means you can start to push back gently. Maybe by saying, I understand you're upset, but I need you to respect my decision. It's not easy at first, but it slowly untangles you from the emotional string someone else is trying to pull. And that's a step toward a relationship, with them or with yourself, that's actually built on honesty, not control. Shaming. You're sitting across from someone you care about, you're talking, maybe even laughing, and then you share something vulnerable, maybe a mistake you made or something you're struggling with. But instead of support or even gentle honesty, you feel it hit. A look, a word, a tone that makes your stomach drop. Suddenly, you're not just human. You're wrong, bad, less than. That's what shaming does. It's a quiet weapon that makes you feel small. Shaming isn't always loud or obvious. It can show up in a sigh, an eye roll, or a sarcastic, wow, that was smart. It can hide inside jokes that don't really feel funny, or questions that sound like they're meant to help, but really just make you feel embarrassed. It's the parent who says, I didn't raise you to act like this, or the partner who adds, everyone else seems to handle this just fine. These things might not sound cruel on their own, but it's the message underneath that stings. You're not good enough. You're a disappointment. The goal of shaming, whether conscious or not, is to control. If someone can make you feel bad enough about who you are, maybe you'll change. Maybe you'll become smaller, quieter, more obedient. It's a way to force behavior without directly asking, by attaching your worth to your mistakes. And that kind of pressure builds up inside, often silently. You start questioning your choices, hiding parts of yourself, avoiding conversations that might lead to more judgment. Picture this. You open up to a friend about spending too much on something you regret. Instead of saying, I get it, that happens, they say, wow, no wonder you're always broke. That's not feedback, that's a shame. It doesn't guide you, it wounds you. And maybe you laugh it off, but later, you think twice before ever being honest again. In families, shaming can be generational. A kid expresses anger or sadness, and they're told to stop being dramatic or quit crying like a baby. Over time, they learn to bury emotions to avoid being made to feel foolish. In adulthood, that can turn into anxiety, self-doubt, or the inability to speak up. But the thing about shame is, it grows in silence. And once you start to name it, once you see it for what it is, it begins to lose power. You start recognizing when someone's words aren't about you being bad, but about them trying to control or deflect. You are allowed to be imperfect. You are allowed to make mistakes, to feel things deeply, to change your mind, to grow at your own pace. Real connection doesn't shame you into becoming someone else. It meets you where you are, with respect and care. Playing the victim. You know those moments when you try to bring something up, something that bothered you, something they did. And before you can even finish, the other person starts crying, looking hurt, or saying things like, I can't believe you'd accuse me of that. Or, you're always attacking me. Suddenly the spotlight is no longer on what happened. Now you're comforting them. That's playing the victim. It's a subtle shift, but it changes everything. You went in expecting a conversation. Instead, you're now in a strange emotional role reversal, where the person who hurt you has turned themselves into the one who's been wronged. It's confusing, frustrating, and very effective, because it takes all the energy out of the room and redirects it back to them. Let's imagine you're dating someone, and they often cancel plans at the last minute without explanation. You finally decide to talk about it. You say, I feel disappointed when you change plans without letting me know in advance. A simple, calm sentence. But instead of acknowledging it, they say, "I guess I just can't do anything right. I try my best and you're still not happy." Now you feel guilty. You start reassuring them instead of talking about what you needed to say. Your original concern gets swept under the rug. This tactic works because it messes with your sense of fairness. Most people don't want to hurt others. So, when someone suddenly acts like a wounded animal, especially when they're the one who caused harm, you might feel like you're being too harsh. But here's the trick. They're not actually addressing your feelings. They're avoiding responsibility by flipping the emotional script. In friendships, this can look like someone always turning problems into a pity party. You might bring up that they've been distant or dismissive, and they reply with, "Everyone leaves me eventually, just like you're doing now," instead of owning their part. Again, you're left soothing them, not being heard. The victim role can be especially manipulative because it seems harmless, soft even. But it's powerful. It keeps the person in control while appearing defenseless. It stops accountability in its tracks, and if it happens enough, you might just stop bringing things up altogether. Why bother if every concern turns into a guilt trip? It's important to remember, being hurt doesn't make someone a victim in every situation. And calling out someone's behavior isn't cruelty. If someone truly cares, they'll want to understand how they've affected you. They might feel sad, sure, but they won't weaponize that sadness to avoid facing the truth. You deserve conversations where both people can speak and be heard. You're not wrong for expressing your feelings, and you don't have to carry someone else's guilt just because they've wrapped it in tears. Pacing and leading. You're talking to someone, maybe a charismatic speaker, a smooth-talking salesperson, or even someone you're just starting to date. At first, the conversation feels natural. They seem to follow your pace, your energy. Then you notice something else. They're guiding the direction of the talk without you even realizing it. You think you're leading, but somehow they're gently steering the way. This is called pacing and leading. A subtle psychological manipulation tactic that can feel like magic, until you realize what's really going on. Pacing and leading starts with pacing. That means matching the other person's behavior, tone, rhythm, or emotions. It's kind of like dancing. One person mirrors the other so closely that it creates comfort and connection. The manipulator might match how fast you talk, your emotional mood, your language, or even your breathing. And as you begin to feel that this person gets me, your guard drops. That's when they move to leading. Now that they've synced with you, they start to gently guide you toward their opinions, their decisions, or even their goals. Because they've earned your unconscious trust during the pacing phase, you're more likely to follow their lead without noticing the shift. Let's say you're upset and talking to someone about a stressful day. They nod, sigh at the right times, and say things like, "Yeah, it feels like no one appreciates how much pressure you're under." You feel heard. Then they say, "That's why people like us have to take control of our lives. We can't wait around." That's the lead. They matched your emotional state, then used it to push a message. If they suddenly started with that message, it might have felt pushy or out of place. But because they paced first, it feels natural. Sales and persuasion experts use this all the time. A car dealer might start by matching your budget worries or concerns, nodding along with your frustrations. Then they pivot. That's exactly why a reliable car like this, with low maintenance, is a smarter, long-term investment. It sounds like advice, but it's really a sales technique. In manipulative relationships, this tactic can be dangerous. Someone might mirror your emotional state when you're vulnerable, build trust fast, and then begin to influence your decisions, even isolate you from others or make you doubt yourself. The pacing draws you in, and the leading pulls you where they want you to go. It's subtle and often very effective because it doesn't feel like pressure. It feels like a connection. That's why it's so powerful and why being aware of it matters. Real trust and connection should grow naturally, not be engineered to manipulate your path. If someone always seems to flow with you, and then you find yourself agreeing with things you weren't sure about before, take a step back. You might not be dancing, you might just be getting led. Mirror and matching. You're sitting across from someone in conversation, maybe a new friend, a salesperson, or even someone you're dating. You start to notice something odd. They use the same phrases you just said. They laugh the same way. Their body language mirrors yours. If you lean back, they lean back. If you cross your arms, they do too. At first it feels comfortable, even familiar. But what you may not realize is that you're being gently steered through a psychological tactic called mirror and matching. This technique comes from the idea that people tend to like those who seem like them. It makes sense. When someone behaves similarly, we feel understood. We relax. We trust them more easily. But manipulators use this natural instinct to get under your skin, to build quick rapport and lower your defenses. Not for connection, but control. Let's say you're in a job interview. The interviewer subtly copies your posture and speech patterns. You might walk away feeling like you clicked. You think, they really got me. But what actually happened was mirroring, and it was calculated to create false closeness. In relationships, manipulators often mirror your values and emotions. If you say you love hiking, they suddenly love hiking. If you share that you're into a certain type of music, they start bringing it up too. They build a false sense of compatibility, not because they share your interests, but because they're trying to get closer, faster. This fast bonding creates trust, which makes it easier for them to influence or even exploit you later. Even salespeople use it. You mention you're a parent? Suddenly, they are too. You use casual slang? So do they. It's all part of matching your style so you feel at ease. And when you're at ease, you're more likely to say yes, to agree, to buy. It's important to note, not all mirroring is bad. People often do it unconsciously when they feel connected. It's a natural part of human empathy. The difference with manipulation is the intention. If someone is copying you to make you feel seen while hiding their real self, they're using that bond as a tool, not as a bridge. To protect yourself, don't ignore that little something's off feeling. Ask yourself, is this person always agreeing? Do they ever show their own opinions or quirks? Healthy relationships, whether professional or personal, are built on real connection, not mimicry. Being liked is nice. Being mirrored can feel flattering. But always pause and look deeper. Because sometimes what feels like understanding is just someone playing a reflection. One crafted to pull you closer while keeping their real motives hidden. Baiting. Have you ever found yourself in a conversation that started off normal, but suddenly took a turn that left you feeling cornered or strangely defensive? Maybe someone threw a sharp comment your way, subtle enough to deny, but personal enough to sting. You responded, maybe with confusion, maybe with frustration, and then they smirked and said, "Wow, you're so dramatic," or "Relax, I was just joking." In that moment, everything flips. You were just defending yourself, but now you're the one being accused of overreacting. That's baiting. Emotional manipulation disguised as innocent interaction. Baiting is when someone deliberately provokes you to get an emotional reaction. The goal isn't to resolve anything. It's to make you look unstable, overly sensitive, or aggressive. It's often done with a calm voice, a passive-aggressive remark, or even a fake smile. The moment you react strongly, they act innocent, putting the spotlight on your reaction instead of their words. Think about when someone makes a subtle dig about your appearance or intelligence in front of others. You feel the heat rise, you respond sharply, and they shrug it off with a fake laugh. "I was just teasing." Now you're the angry one, and they're just the funny person who can't say anything without you taking it the wrong way. You end up questioning yourself. Was I too harsh? Did I overreact? But deep down, something still doesn't sit right. That's the trick. Baiting is meant to make you doubt your instincts. It keeps you spinning in circles, trying to justify a reaction to something you know felt wrong but can't quite explain. And if it happens often enough, you may start to second-guess your feelings altogether. This tactic often appears in toxic relationships, where one person wants to stay in control. Instead of taking accountability or engaging in honest communication, they poke, prod, and nudge, hoping to knock you off balance. Once you're rattled, they stand back and act innocent. It's a way to manipulate the narrative and paint themselves as the calm, rational one, while you're left flustered and frustrated. The best defense against baiting is awareness. Recognize the moment your emotions start to rise unexpectedly. Ask yourself, was that comment really innocent, or was it designed to provoke me? You don't need to defend yourself against every jab. Sometimes the most powerful move is choosing not to react. Remaining calm and disengaging sends a message. You see through the game and you're not playing. Not everything deserves a response, especially not someone fishing for control by poking your peace. Minimizing. Sometimes it's not what's said that hurts the most, it's how it's said. You open up about something personal, something that's been bothering you, and the response you get isn't support or understanding. Instead, you're told, "That's not a big deal," or "You're overreacting." Just like that, your feelings get pushed aside, dismissed like they don't count. That's minimizing. Minimizing happens when someone makes your emotions, experiences, or pain seem smaller or less important than they are. It's not always loud or obvious. It can be quiet, even polite on the surface, but it cuts deep. Over time, it teaches you to question your own reactions. You start thinking, maybe I am being too sensitive. Or, maybe I just need to toughen up. Imagine you come home from work, frustrated after a long day where your ideas were ignored in a meeting. You try to talk about it with your partner. Instead of listening, they shrug and say, "You're lucky you even have a job right now. Some people would kill to be in your shoes." Now your bad day has been compared to someone else's struggle, and your feelings are left out in the cold. The thing is, minimizing doesn't make pain go away. It just pushes it underground. You may stop talking about what's bothering you, not because things are better, but because you feel like you're not allowed to feel what you feel. That silence builds up, and when it's repeated enough, it becomes easy to believe your emotions are invalid, or that they're a burden to others. Sometimes people minimize because they don't know how to respond to emotional discomfort. They might be uncomfortable with vulnerability, or they've learned to ignore their own feelings, so they do the same to others. Other times, it's a way to keep control in a conversation. If they can make your feelings seem too much, they don't have to take responsibility or dig deeper. In relationships, romantic, family, or even friendships, minimizing can quietly chip away at trust. If every time you express yourself you're told to relax or get over it, you start feeling alone, even when someone's sitting right next to you. But here's the truth. Your feelings are real. They don't need to be huge or dramatic to be worth listening to. You don't have to justify or explain your emotions to make them valid. If it hurts, it hurts. If something matters to you, that matters. People who care will make space for your experiences, even if they don't fully understand them. They'll say, "Tell me more," instead of, "It's not a big deal." And that difference, the willingness to listen without shrinking your world, can make all the difference in how safe and supported you feel. Social proof exploitation. Imagine walking down the street and seeing a huge line outside a restaurant. You don't even know what kind of food they serve, but something inside you thinks, that place must be good if so many people are waiting. Without realizing it, you've just been nudged by a powerful psychological trick. Social proof exploitation. Social proof is a normal, everyday part of how we make decisions. When we're unsure about what to do, we often look at others and think, well, if they're doing it, maybe I should too. It's the brain's shortcut for safety and belonging, a quick way to decide what's right based on what the group seems to believe. But manipulators can twist this instinct to their advantage. Let's say you're shopping online for a new skincare product. You come across a cream that claims to work miracles. The website has hundreds of glowing reviews, 5-star ratings, and a bold line that says, 10,000 people bought this today. It sounds impressive, and maybe it's legit, but sometimes those numbers are inflated or even fake. The tactic here is to create the illusion that everyone is buying it, so you feel pressured to join in. That's social proof being exploited, using the appearance of popularity to influence your choice, even if the truth is more complicated. This manipulation doesn't just happen in sales. It can show up in relationships and group settings too. Imagine you're in a group of friends, and one person keeps making harsh jokes at your expense. You feel uncomfortable, but everyone else laughs. You look around and think, maybe I'm overreacting. They all think it's funny. So you stay silent. That's social proof at work again. You doubt your instincts because the group seems to accept something you're unsure about. Manipulators use this to isolate individuals. If they can get a few people to side with them, or at least pretend to, it creates a ripple effect. Others, not wanting to be left out or seem wrong, go along too. Suddenly, it feels like everyone agrees with the manipulator, even if many are just silently going with the flow. This tactic is especially strong on social media. People use likes, shares, comments, and influencer endorsements to create fake credibility. A video with 1 million views seems more trustworthy than one with 10, even if the content is misleading or harmful. We assume popularity equals truth, but that's not always the case. The best way to protect yourself from social proof exploitation is to slow down. Ask yourself, do I believe this because it feels right, or just because others seem to? Trust your judgment. Just because a crowd is headed one way doesn't mean it's the right direction. Sometimes the strongest voice is the one that questions, not the one that follows. Authority bias. Every day, we're influenced by people we see as in charge, those with titles, uniforms, or just a certain kind of confidence that makes them seem like they know what they're talking about. This is where authority bias comes in. It's a psychological manipulation tactic that takes advantage of our natural tendency to trust and follow people who appear to be in positions of authority, even when they might not deserve that trust. Think back to school. Most of us were taught to listen to the teacher, respect the principal, follow the rules. That mindset doesn't just disappear when we grow up. We carry it with us into adulthood, often assuming that if someone has a title like doctor, manager, expert, or even just speaks with confidence, then they must know better than we do. And while this isn't always harmful, it becomes a problem when someone uses that perception of authority to manipulate others. For example, imagine you go to a car dealership and the salesperson, dressed in a sharp suit and speaking confidently, tells you, "This is the best deal you'll find anywhere. I've been doing this for 20 years." Even if you had doubts, their tone, appearance, and claimed experience might convince you to go ahead with the purchase. You trust them, not necessarily because of what they said, but because they sound like they know what they're talking about. That's authority bias in action. This tactic is often used in advertising as well. Companies hire actors dressed as doctors to recommend toothpaste or supplements, even if the product itself has no real medical backing. Why? Because they know people are more likely to believe something when it comes from someone who looks and sounds like an expert, even if it's all just for show. The white coat, the calm voice, the doctor-approved label. It's all meant to trigger that deep instinct to obey authority. In relationships or social settings, someone might use their job title, age, or experience to dominate conversations or decisions. "Trust me, I know what I'm doing," they might say, even when their actions are questionable. And because they seem confident, others fall in line, often ignoring their own instincts or better judgment. Over time, this kind of manipulation can lead people to give up their power and rely too heavily on the so-called expert, even when that person is acting out of self-interest. Authority bias works because it taps into something we've been trained to believe, that those in power must have earned it, and therefore, they know best. But the truth is, not all authority figures are trustworthy, and not everyone who seems confident or experienced actually has your best interest at heart. To guard against this manipulation, it's important to pause and think, am I agreeing with this person because of what they're saying, or just because of who they appear to be? Trust your own reasoning. Authority can be a guide, but it should never be a shortcut to truth. Illusion of choice. Sometimes we're faced with decisions that feel overwhelming, like we're stuck between two choices, neither of which feels completely right. But what if you were told there was a way out? A way to choose between two options that both seem appealing, but actually lead you to the same result? This is the illusion of choice, a psychological manipulation tactic where someone gives you the appearance of having options, but no matter what you pick, they have already shaped the outcome. Imagine you're shopping for a new phone. You walk into a store, and the salesperson presents you with two phones. This one is the latest model, and this one is a bit cheaper, but it has all the features you need. Both phones seem to fit your needs, but you're left unsure which to choose. You're thinking about the price, the features, and your budget. However, the salesperson never gives you a third option, like a completely different brand or a less expensive model that might suit you better. In reality, both options are carefully selected to steer you in the direction they want you to go. Even though you feel like you have a choice, you're only picking between two options they've already decided are best for you. You're led down a path without even realizing it. This tactic is commonly used in business and advertising. Companies love to create an illusion of choice because it makes consumers feel empowered. If you go to a fast food restaurant and see a menu with 5 types of burgers, 3 salads, and 10 sides, you might feel like you have plenty of options. But all of those choices are just variations on the same idea: burgers, fries, and soda. The illusion is that you're in control, making the decision. But in reality, the company has limited your options to what they want to sell the most. The illusion of choice isn't just something you encounter when shopping. It's also used in social and political situations. For example, imagine a politician giving a speech during an election. They might present a couple of different policy options, each of which sounds like a different approach to solving a problem. However, both options are essentially the same, just worded differently. The illusion of choice makes you think you have a real decision to make, but both options lead to the same outcome: serving the politician's agenda. In personal relationships, this tactic can also show up, often in subtle ways. Imagine a partner who constantly asks for your opinion on decisions. Do you want to go out tonight, or would you rather stay in? But no matter what you choose, they seem to subtly push for one option over the other, making it clear that they're only asking because they want you to choose what they had in mind all along. The illusion here isn't about giving you a real decision. It's about making you feel like you have control when, in fact, they've already made the choice for you. The illusion of choice manipulates the feeling of autonomy, making you think you're in charge when, in reality, the outcome is already predetermined. Recognizing this tactic involves asking yourself, Do I really have a variety of options here? Or am I being steered toward a particular outcome without realizing it? It's about understanding that sometimes the choices presented to us are carefully crafted to give us the feeling of control while keeping us within certain boundaries. Framing effect. Sometimes, the way something is presented can completely change how we feel about it, even if the facts stay exactly the same. That's the essence of framing effect manipulation, a tactic used to influence decisions just by changing how information is worded or framed. It plays on our emotions and instincts, often without us even noticing. Imagine this. You're in a grocery store looking at two packages of ground beef. One says 90% lean, the other says 10% fat. They are literally the same thing. But most people will choose the 90% lean one. Why? Because it sounds healthier. It feels more positive. That's the framing effect at work. By shifting focus onto the positive aspect, the decision feels easier, more appealing, even though both options are identical. Manipulators use this tactic all the time to steer your choices, especially when they don't want you to think too deeply. It's not about changing the facts, but about changing how you feel about them. In politics, for example, a leader might say, "We've reduced crime by 20%. That sounds great, right? But they might be leaving out that the crime rate went up 50% the year before. So while crime is down from a recent spike, it's still higher than it was overall. They're not lying. They're just framing the information to make themselves look better. In relationships, this kind of manipulation can be more personal. Suppose your partner often cancels plans last minute. When you bring it up, they don't say, "Sorry for not respecting your time." Instead, they might say, "I just care so much about work and being responsible." By framing their behavior as a positive trait, they shift how you see the situation and avoid accountability. Advertisers use this constantly. A product isn't just low sugar, it's guilt-free. A cosmetic isn't just makeup, it's confidence in a bottle. They shape the message to influence your feelings and bypass your logic. Even medical information gets framed. A doctor might say, "There's a 95% success rate," instead of saying, "There's a 5% chance this could fail." Both are true, but one sounds much more reassuring than the other. The danger of framing manipulation is that it makes you think you're making your own decision, when really, someone's guiding you with clever language. It doesn't give you the full picture. It's a magician's trick with words. To guard against it, try flipping the frame. If something is presented as a positive, ask yourself what the negative version would sound like. If a risk is hidden in shiny packaging, try rewording it. When you learn to spot the frame, you take back control of the picture, and the decision becomes truly yours. Zeigarnik effect. In the world of psychology, there are hidden forces that push our minds in certain directions without us even noticing. One of these forces is called the Zeigarnik effect, a powerful way our brains hold on to unfinished tasks and loose ends, creating a feeling of tension and pulling our focus until we find a way to close the gap. This natural tendency can be used by clever manipulators to keep people hooked, anxious, or motivated to act a certain way. The Zeigarnik effect gets its name from Bluma Zeigarnik, a Russian psychologist who discovered it back in the 1920s. The story goes that she was sitting in a cafe and noticed that waiters could easily remember complicated orders that hadn't been delivered yet. But once the order was completed, they would forget it quickly. Curious, she ran experiments and found that people remember unfinished or interrupted tasks much better than completed ones. Our minds hold on to unfinished business like an open loop, constantly reminding us that something isn't done. In real life, marketers and manipulators use the Zeigarnik effect all the time. Think about cliffhangers in TV shows. A season ends with a major character hanging off a cliff, literally or emotionally, and the story doesn't feel finished. Your brain can't let it go. You keep thinking about it, and when the next season comes out, you rush to watch it. The show creators deliberately leave the story incomplete to keep you engaged and coming back for more. Another example happens in online shopping. You start to fill out a purchase form, and halfway through, you leave the website. Later, you get an email. Finish your checkout. Your cart is waiting for you. They know that by starting the process, your brain already feels connected to it, and the unfinished task will create tension inside you. Completing the purchase relieves that tension, exactly what they want. Even in personal relationships, someone might use the Zeigarnik effect without you realizing it. Imagine a friend or partner who often starts emotional conversations but never finishes them. They bring up a serious issue, but then suddenly say, "We'll talk about it later," and leave you hanging. Your mind keeps circling the topic, feeling unsettled and anxious. You might chase after closure, becoming more emotionally dependent on that person without even understanding why. The Zeigarnik effect is a simple but powerful tool because our brains are naturally wired to seek completion and resolution. When something is left open or unresolved, it nags at us, quietly demanding our attention and energy. Manipulators use this to pull people into cycles of worry, curiosity, or action, often without needing to apply any direct pressure. Understanding the Zeigarnik effect helps you recognize when you're being pulled into someone else's unfinished business. When you notice that tension, you can pause and ask yourself, is this something I need to complete? Or am I being manipulated into feeling like I have to? Sometimes, simply becoming aware of the trick is enough to set yourself free from its grip. Power of touch. In everyday life, touch is a fundamental part of human interaction. A simple tap on the shoulder, a handshake, or even a hug can convey warmth, trust, and connection. However, the power of touch can also be used manipulatively to influence people's thoughts and actions. It works because touch can evoke strong emotional responses, creating a sense of comfort, familiarity, or even dependency, which can be used to sway someone's decision-making or feelings. Imagine you're in a business meeting, and your colleague, who you don't know very well, reaches out and pats you on the back after you present an idea. It's a simple, seemingly friendly gesture, but suddenly, you feel a sense of connection with them. You might even be more likely to agree with their opinion, or feel more comfortable working with them in the future. The touch was small, but it triggered a positive emotional response, making you more open to their influence. In relationships, touch can play a powerful role in creating intimacy or controlling behavior. For example, a partner might use physical affection, like holding your hand or hugging you, to soften their words when making a request. If they want something from you, like a favor or a change in behavior, they might give you a gentle touch, knowing that it will make you more likely to comply. The physical contact makes you feel cared for or understood, which can cause you to overlook the manipulation happening in the background. In marketing, the power of touch is also used, albeit more subtly. Think of a salesperson at a store who, after a few minutes of friendly conversation, lightly touches your arm while discussing a product. This seemingly innocent gesture creates a bond and triggers a psychological response that makes you more likely to purchase the item. The touch creates a sense of rapport and connection, making the interaction feel more personal and less transactional. Another example of this tactic is seen in customer service. If a representative shakes your hand or touches your shoulder in a welcoming way, you might feel more positive about their service. This positive feeling can make you more likely to overlook a mistake or be more forgiving about a delay. The power of touch manipulates your emotional state, leading you to make decisions based more on how you feel than on the facts of the situation. While touch can be a natural and positive form of communication, it's important to be aware of when it might be used to manipulate. If someone is using touch to get you to feel a certain way or to sway your decisions, it's crucial to recognize the intention behind it. Trust your instincts and be mindful of how you feel after physical interactions. If the touch feels out of place or manipulative, it's a sign that you might need to set boundaries or reassess the situation. Blame shifting. Imagine you're standing in the middle of an argument, feeling frustrated or hurt, and you try to explain how something made you feel. Instead of listening, the other person flips everything around. Suddenly, you're not talking about what they did. You're defending yourself. The focus shifts completely, and before you know it, you're apologizing. That's blame shifting. It's the art of turning the tables so the responsibility lands anywhere but where it belongs. Let's say you bring up something simple, like feeling hurt when a friend cancels plans last minute for the third time. Rather than owning it or offering a real apology, they might say, "Well, you never seem excited to hang out anyway." Or, "You're always so sensitive." Now, instead of staying on the topic of them canceling, you're busy trying to explain your own behavior. They've successfully redirected the blame onto you, and the original issue goes unresolved. Blame shifting doesn't always come with raised voices. Sometimes it's subtle, a sigh, a shrug, or a carefully worded sentence like, "I wouldn't have said that if you hadn't pushed me." It's sneaky because on the surface it sounds like an explanation, but in truth, it's an escape route, a way to avoid accountability while making you feel guilty. Over time, this pattern can mess with your head. You start second-guessing your reactions. You might feel like you can't bring anything up without being made to feel like the bad guy. And if it happens often enough, you might even stop speaking up altogether. That's when blame shifting becomes more than a defense mechanism. It becomes a form of control. People use blame shifting for different reasons. Sometimes they don't want to face the discomfort of being wrong. Other times, they're afraid of losing control or appearing flawed. But whatever the reason, the result is the same. It keeps you off balance, and them off the hook. One common version of this happens in toxic relationships. Let's say someone lies, and when they get caught, they respond with, "You're spying on me?" That's the real issue here. Suddenly, the lie is forgotten, and the spotlight is on your behavior. It's exhausting and confusing, and it's meant to be. Healthy conflict involves taking ownership when we mess up. It's not always easy, but it builds trust. When someone always finds a way to make everything your fault, they're not trying to grow. They're trying to deflect. And you're left carrying emotional baggage that isn't yours. Recognizing blame shifting is the first step in not falling into the trap. You're allowed to express how you feel without being turned into the villain. Standing firm and not absorbing blame that doesn't belong to you is a quiet but powerful way to protect your sense of self. Passive aggressiveness. There's a type of tension that hangs in the air without a single word being spoken about it. You feel it in the tight smiles, the slight delays in response, the subtle jabs that are wrapped in politeness. It doesn't explode, it simmers. This is how passive aggressiveness shows up. It's not direct conflict, but it's not peace either. It's that strange space where someone says one thing, but their tone, body language, or actions say something else entirely. Imagine you're having dinner with a friend. You showed up a bit late, and instead of telling you they're annoyed, they greet you with, "Wow, you made it. I was starting to think you forgot about me." It's said with a laugh, but something in their voice makes you pause. Are they joking? Are they hurt? You ask if everything's okay, and they wave you off. "I'm fine." But all night, their energy feels cold, their words sharp. You're left unsure of what just happened or how to fix it. This pattern isn't random. Passive-aggressive behavior often comes from people who are uncomfortable with confrontation. Instead of expressing their feelings openly, they hide them behind sarcasm, withdrawal, or backhanded compliments. It's like emotional shadow boxing. You never get a clean hit, and the fight is happening whether you agreed to it or not. In a relationship, it might look like your partner being upset, but refusing to say why. Instead, they leave dishes for you to clean, respond with one-word texts, or forget something they promised to do. When you bring it up, they act confused or accuse you of being dramatic. It keeps the tension alive, but the actual issue stays buried. You end up tiptoeing around, trying to decode what's really going on. What's tricky is that passive aggressiveness doesn't offer any resolution. You can't fix a problem that's never directly named. You just get stuck in a loop of guessing, adjusting, and hoping the mood shifts. Over time, that kind of emotional climate wears people down. It creates distance, frustration, and a lot of unspoken resentment. Dealing with it takes more than just patience. It takes clarity. Sometimes calmly pointing out the pattern can help. I feel like something's bothering you, but I'm not sure what it is. Can we talk about it? That can open a door if the other person is willing. But not everyone is ready to be direct, even when given the chance. At the end of the day, being around someone who regularly uses passive aggression can feel like playing a game without knowing the rules. It makes connections harder and conversations less honest. Clarity and communication, those are what keep a relationship balanced, not quite tension or disguised frustration. Creating a sense of obligation. Imagine being in a situation where someone makes you feel like you owe them something. Not because you actually do, but because they've carefully made it seem that way. This is the manipulation tactic known as creating a sense of obligation. It plays on our natural desire to be fair, polite, and return favors, even when we didn't ask for the favor in the first place. Let's say you're walking down the street and someone hands you a free sample of perfume. You take it, smile, and say thank you. Then, just a few seconds later, they start trying to sell you the full-size bottle. You feel awkward. You didn't ask for the sample, but now that they gave you something, even small, it feels rude to walk away without at least listening, or maybe even buying. That's the power of this tactic. It creates a small imbalance that makes you want to give something back, even when the original act was never really a gift, but a setup. This sense of obligation is deeply rooted in human behavior. From a young age, many of us are taught, if someone does something nice for you, you should return the favor. And most of the time, that's a beautiful idea. But manipulators twist it. They use kindness not as a genuine act of goodwill, but as a trap. They give just enough attention, compliments, help, to make you feel indebted. Then they collect. In relationships, this might look like someone doing something generous, but with strings attached. For example, a friend offers to help you move. They act super generous about it. But later, they start calling in that favor in unfair ways. I helped you move, so the least you can do is drive me around this weekend. Or, remember what I did for you. I need you to take my side on this. Suddenly you realize their kindness wasn't really about helping you. It was about owning a piece of your loyalty. Manipulators may even give you things you didn't want or ask for, just so they can later say, after everything I've done for you. This guilt-inducing technique forces people into uncomfortable positions, often agreeing to things they don't want just to avoid seeming ungrateful. At work, a boss might praise your efforts and give you a bonus or small perk, then subtly expect more unpaid overtime. If you push back, they might say something like, I thought you appreciated everything I've done for you. Again, the favor becomes a form of quiet control. To protect yourself, it's important to recognize when someone is giving to you with expectations. Healthy giving is done freely, without guilt or demands in return. It's okay to say thank you and still draw boundaries. Just because someone gave you something doesn't mean you owe them access to your time, energy, or loyalty, especially if that gift came with invisible strings. Selective memory. Have you ever found yourself in a conversation where someone insists something didn't happen, something you clearly remember? You bring up an event, a conversation, a promise, or even a hurtful comment they made, and they look you straight in the eye and say, I never said that. Or, that's not how it happened. You start to second guess yourself. Was your memory off? Are you being too sensitive? This kind of moment isn't just frustrating. It's a classic example of selective memory, a psychological tactic used to dodge accountability. Selective memory isn't about someone forgetting things in a normal human way. It's when someone forgets very specific details that make them look bad, but somehow always remembers the parts that make them look good, or that put the blame on someone else. It's not about poor memory. It's about control. Assume you're arguing with someone about something they promised. Maybe they told you they'd handle a responsibility or support you in a situation. When you bring it up later, they act like the conversation never happened. "What are you talking about?" they say. "I never agreed to that." The problem is, you know they did, but because they deny it so confidently, it throws you off. You feel like you're stuck defending reality itself. In relationships, this tactic can make someone feel like they're losing their grip on what's true. You try to speak up about something painful or disrespectful, and the other person simply denies it or rewrites the details. "You're being dramatic," or "you always exaggerate." They conveniently forget the parts that matter to you and only remember what fits their version of the story. Even in family or work dynamics, selective memory shows up. A parent might forget the times they crossed a boundary or spoke harshly, but will never forget the one time you reacted in frustration. A coworker might forget their own mistakes on a project, but recall every detail of when you missed a deadline. What makes selective memory manipulative is that it shifts the burden onto you. Instead of dealing with the issue at hand, you find yourself trying to prove that your memory is correct. The focus moves away from their behavior and onto your credibility, making it hard to stand your ground. Over time, this can erode your confidence. You may start to stay silent to avoid being told you're remembering things wrong. But just because someone denies something doesn't mean it didn't happen. Trust in your own recollection. If a pattern emerges, where your memories are always questioned but theirs are always framed in a favorable way, that's a red flag. Healthy communication allows for honest disagreements, not distorted truths. You shouldn't have to argue for your own reality. When someone uses selective memory to twist the narrative, it's not just a misunderstanding, it's a manipulation meant to keep you off balance. And the first step out of that confusion is recognizing it for what it is. False promises. Let's say someone tells you they're going to change. They sit you down, look you in the eye, and say all the right things. "I know I messed up," they admit, "but I promise that won't happen again. Just give me one more chance." At that moment, their words feel sincere. Maybe you even feel a sense of relief, like finally they've heard you. Finally they understand. So you give them that chance. You hold on, hoping this is the turning point. But weeks pass, and nothing really changes. The same problems come up. The same behaviors repeat. And when you bring it up again, they say something like, "You have to be patient," or "I told you I'm working on it." The cycle starts all over. That's what false promises look like. Commitments that sound genuine, but are never meant to be kept. It's not always loud or obvious. In fact, it often comes across as gentle or hopeful. Someone who uses false promises doesn't always want to fight. They just want you to stay, so they tell you what they think you want to hear. It might be about getting help, being more supportive, making time for you, quitting a harmful habit, or finally doing the thing you've been waiting for. But it's all talk. No follow-through. No real effort. Think of it like this. If someone gives you a gift box, beautifully wrapped, and you open it only to find it empty, not once, but again and again, eventually, you stop being excited by the wrapping. You start to see through it. False promises are emotional gift boxes with nothing inside. This tactic is powerful because it preys on hope. It keeps you emotionally stuck, always looking toward the future, instead of focusing on what's actually happening right now. It silences your frustration because every time you get upset, you're reminded, but they said they would change, and you feel guilty for not believing them. But belief has to be earned, not just with words, but with actions. Whether it's a romantic partner, a friend, a family member, or even a boss. When promises keep coming and real change doesn't follow, it's not about effort anymore. It's about control. It's about giving you just enough to stop you from walking away, without actually doing the work to build something better. In the end, you don't have to keep accepting promises that go nowhere. It's okay to say, "I've heard this before." It's okay to expect more than words, because real change doesn't need to be announced over and over. It shows up on its own, consistently, quietly, and honestly. The power of playing dumb. Imagine you're in a meeting at work, and you're trying to get your idea heard. Suddenly, one of your colleagues makes a suggestion that sounds similar to yours, but it's presented with more confidence and authority. You feel that tug of insecurity, questioning if your idea was really that good, even though it's essentially the same idea. The way it was framed makes you start doubting your own thoughts. This is the power of playing dumb. A psychological manipulation tactic where someone pretends to be less knowledgeable or capable than they actually are, in order to manipulate others into making decisions or providing information they wouldn't otherwise. At its core, this tactic works by making others underestimate the manipulator's ability or understanding, leading them to let their guard down and over-explain, share more than they should, or make decisions based on what they think is a simple situation. The manipulator may intentionally ask questions that make them seem uninformed, all the while using the responses they receive to steer the conversation or situation in a direction that benefits them. A classic example of this happens in negotiations. Let's say a person is negotiating a deal, and instead of confidently laying out their terms, they feign ignorance or confusion. They might ask simple, seemingly naive questions like, "I don't really understand how this works. Can you explain it to me again?" By doing this, the manipulator gets the other party to explain things more thoroughly, providing information that might later help them close the deal in their favor. The person playing dumb is essentially gaining valuable insight while making the other party feel as though they're helping someone who doesn't know better. In everyday life, this tactic can be used in relationships as well. For instance, one partner might act clueless about what's going on, or pretend to misunderstand something, only to later use that confusion to manipulate the situation. It's as if they're drawing out your thoughts and ideas, pretending to be vulnerable and unaware, when in fact, they're fully aware and just looking for a way to influence your decisions. A manipulative boss could use this tactic in a work setting. For example, they might say, "I'm not sure I understand what you mean. Could you explain that a little more?" While in reality, they are fully aware of the subject, but are using the opportunity to get you to clarify your thoughts and make concessions that might favor them in the long run. By pretending to be clueless, they create a power dynamic where you feel compelled to explain yourself more thoroughly, giving them the upper hand. To defend against this type of manipulation, it's important to recognize when someone is trying to manipulate you by playing dumb. Stay alert to inconsistencies in their behavior. If they suddenly act confused about something they've shown knowledge of before, or they keep asking questions that seem out of place, it might be a tactic to extract more information from you or gain the advantage in a situation. By staying mindful, you can avoid falling into the trap and maintain control of your decisions and conversations. Reframing failure. In life, how we see things often matters more than what actually happens. A clever trick used by manipulators is called reframing failure. a way of changing how a failure looks so that people either feel differently about it or are pushed to keep acting a certain way. Instead of letting someone recognize a true mistake or problem, the manipulator spins the story, giving the failure a new meaning that benefits their goals. The idea of reframing comes from the world of therapy and psychology. Reframing simply means looking at something from a different angle, like putting a new frame around a picture to make it look different. In healthy ways, reframing can help people recover from setbacks and find hope. But when used manipulatively, it becomes a tool to hide the truth, cover up mistakes, or keep someone trapped in a bad situation without realizing it. A real-life example happens in toxic workplaces. Imagine a boss whose project completely fails. It loses money, misses deadlines, and upsets customers. Instead of admitting it, the boss tells the employees, "This wasn't a failure, it was a learning experience. It shows us how tough we are." He frames the disaster as a positive thing to make the team ignore the fact that they are in a sinking ship. Meanwhile, the boss avoids responsibility and keeps the employees loyal and working hard. Another example can be seen in manipulative relationships. Suppose someone repeatedly mistreats their partner, ignoring them, lying, or even being cruel. When the hurt partner confronts them, the manipulator might say, "This just shows how strong our love is. We can survive anything." Here, they reframe emotional harm as a test of love, making the partner doubt their own instincts and stay in the relationship longer than they should. Even cults and extremist groups use reframing failure to keep control. If predictions or promises fail, like a leader saying a great event will happen and it doesn't, they don't admit the mistake. Instead, they say, "We were being tested," or "Our faith wasn't strong enough yet." In this way, failure doesn't weaken the group. It binds them closer together through a twisted new meaning. The danger of reframing failure is that it blocks growth and hides reality. Instead of facing what went wrong and learning from it, people are tricked into believing nothing really went wrong at all. It steals their ability to make good decisions because they are stuck inside a false version of events. Knowing about this trick can protect you. If someone always spins bad outcomes into something good, especially if it keeps you stuck or blinds you to the truth, it's a red flag. It's important to step back and ask yourself, am I being told the whole truth, or just a nicer version that serves someone else's purpose? Real strength comes from seeing reality clearly, even when it's hard, and that includes seeing failures for what they really are. Baader-Meinhof phenomenon. Have you ever learned a new word and then suddenly it feels like you hear it everywhere? Or maybe you just noticed a certain type of car, and now it seems like every other car on the road is the same one. This strange feeling is called the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon, and it's a powerful psychological effect that can also be used for manipulation. The Baader-Meinhof phenomenon happens when your brain notices something new, and then, without you realizing it, becomes super alert to it. It's not that the thing is suddenly appearing more. It's that your mind is now tuned in to see it. Once you spot something, your brain keeps finding it because it's now marked as important. Marketers and manipulators love using this trick. For example, imagine you're scrolling through social media and you see an ad for a fancy new pair of running shoes. You think about it for a second, but move on. Then, you start seeing those same shoes pop up in different ads on your favorite YouTube channel, or even notice someone wearing them on the street. Suddenly, it feels like those shoes are everywhere. This makes you think they must be very popular or special, and you feel a stronger pull to buy them. In truth, the shoes aren't any more common. Your brain is just on high alert for them now. In conversations, skilled manipulators can plant ideas in your mind, knowing the Baader-Meinhof effect will do the rest. For example, a political campaign might mention a certain issue once, maybe in a speech or a social media post. Then, because you've heard it once, you start noticing it more in the news, conversations, and articles. It seems like it's a huge, urgent problem, even if nothing really changed. Your brain is just spotting it more, and this can shift your beliefs and decisions without you even realizing it. Even in relationships, this can show up. A manipulative partner might hint that good partners always show affection in public. After hearing that once, you might start noticing couples holding hands everywhere you go. It strengthens the belief that you're missing something important, even though those couples were always there before. You just didn't pay attention. The Baader-Meinhof phenomenon shows how easy it is for our brains to create patterns and urgency out of thin air. When someone wants to manipulate you, they don't have to change the world. They just have to make you notice something once. After that, your own mind does the work of convincing you it's important. The way to protect yourself is simple. When you notice something popping up over and over, ask yourself, is this really happening more? Or am I just noticing it more now? Being aware of this mental trick keeps you in control, instead of letting your brain be quietly led in a certain direction. Creating a sense of urgency. You're walking through a store and see a big red sign, "Only 2 left." Suddenly you feel a little anxious. You weren't even looking for that item, but now you're considering grabbing it before it's gone. That little twist in your gut, that urgency to act fast, is exactly what this tactic is all about. It's called creating a sense of urgency, and it's a classic form of psychological manipulation. This tactic works by making you feel like time is running out. And when we think we might miss out on something, we tend to act without thinking it through. It taps into our natural fear of missing out. The "what if I don't get another chance?" feeling that pushes us to make quick decisions, often under pressure. Marketers use this all the time. Think about flash sales, countdown timers on websites, or phrases like limited time offer and last chance. These aren't just catchy slogans. They're designed to speed up your decision-making process. When you feel rushed, you're less likely to compare options, check reviews, or even ask yourself if you really need the item. You're not thinking clearly. You're reacting emotionally. But it's not just businesses that use this. Manipulative people in relationships or negotiations may also create urgency to get what they want. For example, someone might say, "If you don't decide right now, I'm walking away," or "You need to give me an answer tonight," or "The offer's off the table." That pressure removes your time to reflect, question, or seek advice. It corners you into compliance. Here's another subtle version. Someone might make a situation seem more urgent than it really is, just to get you to prioritize their needs over your own. "I need you now. Everything is falling apart," they might say, even if the situation isn't really a crisis. That emotional rush makes you more likely to drop what you're doing and say yes. What makes this tactic so effective is that urgency tricks the brain. It activates a survival response, a sense that something important is slipping away. And in that state, logic takes a back seat. To protect yourself, build a habit of pausing. When you feel rushed, ask, "Why is this urgent? Is the deadline real, or is it being used to pressure me?" Take a breath, step away if you can, and give yourself permission to not decide immediately. Because the truth is, if someone or something is truly worth your time or money, it will still be there after a moment of thought. Real decisions don't require panic, and once you stop letting urgency drive you, you take back control, not just of the moment, but of your choices. Anchoring effect. Imagine you're shopping for a winter coat. You walk into a store and see a beautiful coat marked at $300. Wow, you think, that's expensive. Then you spot another coat that's $180, and suddenly it feels like a bargain. You didn't compare it to other stores, brands, or even think about your budget. You just anchored your judgment to that first number, $300. That's the anchoring effect. When the first piece of information we receive becomes the reference point for everything that comes after. It shapes how we judge value, even if it's random or unrelated. And manipulators use this trick all the time to steer our choices without us noticing. It happens everywhere. Salespeople do it when they start with the highest priced option, so anything cheaper seems like a deal. This premium package is $5,000, but most people go with the $2,500 option. Even if $2,500 is still a lot, it feels more reasonable after hearing $5,000 first. That first number sets the anchor, and your brain adjusts everything around it. Anchoring doesn't just work with prices. It can affect how we see people too. Imagine someone introduces a friend by saying, "He's a genius, top of his class, super driven." Now when you meet him, you're likely to notice things that confirm that image, even if he's just pretty smart. The anchor, genius, shaped your first impression. In relationships, someone might use anchoring to excuse bad behavior. For instance, they might start by telling you how terrible their ex was, yelling, cheating, lying. Compared to that, their own actions, being moody or controlling, seem mild. The anchor, the story of the awful ex, resets your idea of what's normal. Even in negotiations, anchoring is key. Say you're buying a used car. The seller starts by saying, "People have offered me $10,000, but I like you, so I'll take $8,000. That $10,000 sets your expectations, even if the car's real value is closer to $6,000. You feel like you're getting a deal, but only because your sense of value was pulled toward that high starting point. Anchoring works because our brains like shortcuts. When we don't know what something is worth or how to judge a situation, we grab onto the first clue we see. And that clue sticks, even if it's not accurate. The best way to avoid being anchored is to do your own research first. Know what you want, what it's worth, and what your boundaries are, before someone throws out a number or sets the tone. That way, you create your own anchor, not theirs. Because once your mind latches onto that first number or idea, it's hard to pull it loose. And manipulators know it. They just drop the anchor and let your mind do the rest. Lowballing. There's a moment when you're offered something that seems like a great deal. It's too good to pass up. You're looking at a phone, and the salesperson says, "This model is only $200. You're sold. It fits your budget and the price is right." But then, as you're about to pay, they tell you about the additional costs. $50 for a screen protector, $30 for a case, and $100 for an extended warranty. Suddenly the $200 phone now costs you over $300. This is a classic example of lowballing. A tactic where the initial offer seems great, but after you've committed, the price or demands suddenly increase. Lowballing works by getting you to commit to something with a very appealing initial offer. Once you've agreed or mentally committed, the seller or manipulator then introduces hidden costs, conditions, or extra requests that weren't initially part of the deal. They've already hooked you, so now you're more likely to go along with it, even though the final deal isn't as good as the original one. In sales, it's common to see this happen. A car dealer might say, "This car is priced at $15,000. But when you're ready to sign the papers, they add in extra fees for things like processing or documentation, pushing the price up. By this point, you've already invested your time, thought, and energy into the idea of buying that car. You feel like backing out is too complicated, so you reluctantly accept the new price, even though it's higher than you anticipated. It's not just about purchases. This manipulation also appears in personal situations. A friend might ask, "Can you help me with this one small task?" Once you agree, they might say, "Actually, while you're here, can you also do this and this?" It'll only take a bit longer. You've already agreed to help, and now it feels awkward to say no, even though the task has expanded beyond what you expected. Lowballing thrives on the principle of commitment. Once you've said yes to something, even a small thing, you feel an internal pressure to stay consistent with your previous decision. This feeling of consistency is what the manipulator relies on to push you into agreeing to the new terms, even if they weren't part of the original plan. The key to avoiding being manipulated by lowballing is to recognize the tactic when it happens. If something feels too good to be true or too simple at first, be prepared for extra conditions later. Always ask for full details up front, and if the deal changes midway, it's okay to step back and reconsider. Your commitment to the original terms matters, and you don't have to agree to something new just because you've already started down the path. Stay firm in what you agreed to. And remember, there's always room to reassess a deal that shifts unexpectedly. Foot in the door. Imagine someone wants something from you, your time, your money, or your agreement. But instead of asking directly or offering something up front, they start small. They might say, "Can I ask you for just a minute of your time?" Or, "Can you help me with something really quick?" It seems harmless, right? But once you say yes to that tiny request, they follow up with something bigger. This is called the foot in the door technique, and it's a powerful psychological manipulation tactic. This method works by getting you to say yes to something small first. That small yes starts to shape how you see yourself. You think, "Well, I already agreed to help," or "I must be the kind of person who supports this cause." So, when the next bigger request comes, something you might have said no to at first, you're more likely to agree just to stay consistent with your earlier response. Let's take an example. A fundraiser knocks on your door and asks, "Would you mind signing this petition to help support local schools?" You say yes. It's quick and it feels good. A few days later, the same group contacts you again. This time, they ask for a donation. Since you already signed the petition, saying no now feels like backing out. You're more likely to give money, even if you hadn't planned to. Salespeople use this too. Imagine you're at a store, and a friendly employee asks if you'd like a free sample. After tasting it, they say, "Since you liked it, would you like to buy the full-size version?" Because you accepted the sample, and maybe even complimented it, you feel a gentle pressure to follow through. In relationships, this tactic can show up in subtle ways. A partner might start with something small like, "Can you help me with this one thing today?" Then, later, it becomes a pattern of bigger and bigger requests. Over time, you might find yourself doing things you never would have agreed to at the start. But each step felt so small, so natural, that you barely noticed the change. What makes this tactic so tricky is that it plays on our need to be consistent. Humans don't like to feel like we're going back on our word or being inconsistent in our behavior. That's why the first yes is so powerful. It opens the door for more. To protect yourself, start noticing patterns. Ask yourself, would I still say yes if this was the first thing they asked? If the answer is no, you might be under the spell of the foot in the door technique. Just because you agreed to something small doesn't mean you owe anything more. Being kind or helpful doesn't mean saying yes to everything. You're allowed to pause, reflect, and change your mind. No door has to stay open just because you stepped through it once. The foot in the mouth effect. There's a scenario where a person seems to ask a question that's so simple, yet the answer feels loaded with pressure. For example, imagine you're having a casual conversation with a friend and they ask, "Are you really sure you want to do this?" You might hesitate, thinking, "Wait, should I be second-guessing my choice?" This question is not just an innocent inquiry. It's a manipulation technique called the foot-in-the-mouth effect. This technique works by getting you to reveal your uncertainty or doubts, sometimes even before you're fully aware of it. The manipulator knows that once you question your own decision or situation, you may be more susceptible to their influence. It's like planting a seed of doubt in your mind and letting it grow, even if there was no reason to doubt yourself initially. For example, let's say you're preparing to quit a job that you're unhappy with. A colleague might say, "Are you sure you want to leave? This is a stable job." At first you were confident about your decision, but hearing that question makes you pause, and suddenly you find yourself questioning whether you've made the right choice. The manipulator doesn't directly tell you to stay, but they've planted a doubt that now affects how you think about the situation. This tactic is common in situations where someone wants to steer you toward a decision that benefits them. If a salesperson knows you're hesitant about making a purchase, they might ask, "Are you sure this is the right product for you?" The phrasing subtly forces you to reflect on your choice, and because it comes with a question that presumes doubt, it makes you feel unsure, even if you weren't at all before. In relationships, it can show up as well. For example, a partner might say, "Do you really want to go to that event with your friends?" It's a simple question, but it gets you thinking. If you've already decided to go, now you might start questioning if it's the right thing to do. The manipulator knows this tactic works because by simply planting a tiny seed of doubt, they can make you feel uncertain about your own decisions. The beauty of the foot-in-the-mouth effect is that it's subtle. It's not a forceful demand or command, but rather an innocuous question that leads you to doubt yourself. It makes you think, "Maybe I haven't thought this through enough," or "Perhaps there's something I'm missing." To defend against this, it's important to recognize when someone is subtly influencing your decisions by making you second-guess yourself. If you know you've made a choice with solid reasoning, stand firm in it. Don't let others manipulate you by questioning your confidence in your own decisions. Trust yourself, and remember that your initial instincts are often more grounded than you might realize in the moment.